if you have some sort of creative outlet, go for it. You're putting little pieces of yourself into that. That's the whole meaning of life, just to create. Doesn't matter exactly what you're creating, just do something. But like, make sure it feels genuine. Make sure it's coming from you. It has to come from within.
3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to episode 59 of Ruse Radio. We have a very special guest with us today, as always. Who's our special guest today?
I am BK. BKTHAGR808 is my producer name.
I was about to ask you how I pronounce it, so I'm glad you laid it out.
So a lot of people think it's like BKTHAGR808 or like, you know, like it's funny hearing people pronounce it like online.
With that mic, if you could like get it right in front of your, like, because if the thing is, if you talk like to the corner of it, that's where that proximity effect really comes in.
There it goes, right there.
But all right,
there.
continue.
Yes. So, yeah, it's like BKTHAGR808, you know, like just like that. Some people think it's like BK, the GR808 or something like that. They don't get that it's like great, GR8, you know, but they see the 808 at the end of it and they're like, or they see the 08 after great and they're like, their brain just doesn't compute, you know, but it is a pun. It's a producer pun. Everybody loves 808s.
Dude, it's funny. It took me a second to catch it because I was typing in your name, or I was looking at your name and I was reading it. I was thinking, okay, so if I name the podcast, is it BK the Great 808? That's 2 8s in a row. Oh! And that's when it hit me.
Yep.
You got rapper brain inside of you. That's what that is. That's a rapper brain right there.
You know, to be honest, it's funny that you say that because every now and then I write. I like throw stuff in my notes, something that just comes to me and I'm just like, man, I kind of wish I rapped, but at the same time, I just don't have that like flow and like, I mean, like, I guess I have like some sort of flow, but I don't have the voice in myself. I don't have that voice.
Oh, okay. All right, that's fair. I mean, that's where the ghostwriters come from. Mm-hmm. They're those guys.
Yeah, you know, it's like they're the type of dudes that like, okay, I don't really like, you know, I don't hear myself rapping this, but like it's possible I could give this to somebody else that is known, you know, to be rapping and stuff. Like they have that gift. And so you'd be like, all right, what do you think about this? And they'd be like, yeah, give me a mic.
Yeah. See, man, I guess it's, maybe that's what it is for me, is maybe I'm lucky that I have the voice, because I would struggle ghostwriting. I'd be like, dude, I could say that cooler.
Yeah, exactly.
I could say that cooler than that.
Yep.
I don't want to give my bars away.
And it's funny because I've found out that, like, for example, like Charlie Puth, right? I know he's not a rapper, but he has written songs for other artists, and, you know, just giving it to them.
Ed Sheeran, I've heard the same thing.
Yes, and it's so cool how they do that, because it's like, you'd imagine like they have recorded demos of themselves singing the original song before it became an actual song from the other artist that they gave it to.
Yeah,
you know?
The big one I can think of with Ed Sheeran is Love Yourself. It was originally Fuck Yourself.
Really?
And that was, he wrote it on some tour bus with Justin Bieber.
I would say, yeah, you know, because like, I don't know if I've ever heard like Ed singing that song.
Oh, there's a clip.
Really?
I think there is. Like, there's a clip of them writing it.
Okay.
And it's a trip, because you think of it as a Justin Bieber song.
Yeah.
And I think even in the actual song that was released, Ed Sheeran does backup vocals. So they still kept that.
That would be awesome. Yeah. You know, it's like, what was it? I think he wrote that song about, it was Selena Gomez, I think, at the time. I think, right? It was like
Maybe.
Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez. They're kind of going through that like patch or whatever. But
man.
That is very interesting. I had no idea that Ed Sheeran wrote that.
You gotta wonder then if at that point Justin Bieber's having this conversation with Ed Sheeran, like, man, I need to talk about my ex, bro.
Like, this would work perfectly. Like, thank you so much. It's like a gift that just fell in my lap.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's get into the beat making then.
Yes.
So you are a producer. Now, I wonder, with everybody, it's always a different creative process. So how do you usually enter a new beat? How does that start?
It's funny that you asked that, because just before I came over here earlier, I opened Ableton and I'm like, okay, what am I gonna make? What am I gonna do? Is it gonna be trap? Is it gonna be R&B? A little bit of EDM? And so I'll just open a random synth plugin and then just start kind of like messing around with my MIDI keyboard, just kind of, you know, hitting notes. And then for literally 5 to 10 minutes, I'll just be kind of like playing different chords just to kind of hear what clicks in my brain, like makes me go, whoa, I like that, you know. So I'll start out with doing that, and then I just go from there, you know, just going through different sounds.
So you almost like you're searching for a melody, and then you go off of that melody, or is it okay?
Yep. I start with the melody, and then sometimes I'll add on to it, like add like a counter melody, or like a lead, or just something kind of like very ambient, just to kind of chill there in the background.
And with that melody that you're creating initially, like, I imagine that's just very loose then. Like, you're just looking for something.
Yes,
right?
yes. It's like there's very like few times where I'll hear a melody in my head, like before I even like open Ableton, I'll be like, wait a sec, I gotta go like record this right now, but for the most part, yeah, for the most part, it's just like I'm just sitting there, like just toying around, like tinkering with different sounds until I find something that kind of just goes, whoa, like I can hear drums added to it, I can hear like a bass line, or sometimes I'm like, okay, I can hear some like thumping 808s,
And then when you're building around that, is it a very structured process, or is that just as loose, where it's like, okay, I think now I'm going to throw an 808 in. I think now I can hear what the drum pattern is, or are you kind of going at it from like, okay, now we need a lead, and once I have a lead, then I can throw the drums in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, because it's like usually when I have a melody laid down, like the whole thing, like whether it's like chords and then a few like top notes, or like a whole pad, like sometimes it can be very minimalist. Like you can have just like 3 or 4 different chords just laid down. It doesn't have to be anything crazy.
Sometimes that's way better.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
I found out, and the hard way, I found out that simplicity really is key.
I think a lot of producers go through that, where they'll fatten up their beats way too much. Mm-hmm. And it just because it feels like the right thing to do. It feels like I need to throw 10 things in here, so that way it's super complex and it's musically, there's a lot going on. But sometimes those 4 things, just a synth, a lead, and then some drums,
and then a bass,
an 808.
Yeah,
and
an 808
there you go.
there. Yeah, it's like, it's funny because I'll be scrolling through like TikTok every now and then, right? Just to kind of get inspiration, or just to see what other people are making. And I happen to come across this guy who ends up remaking like popular songs, and it's literally just like a 4-note like melody. It's just like a ding 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 ding, and it's then like a drum pattern and then an 808. I'm like thinking to myself, this is so simple. I'm like, but it blew up somehow.
Wow, that is literally reverse engineering.
Yes, yeah. And I'm like, so I got to keep my beats simple, because it's like right now, if I don't have like artists on them, that's fine, but like eventually when I go to get those beats to those artists that I'm like kind of like looking for, whether it's R&B or hip hop, I want to make sure it has enough room for them to flow on it, to do their own thing,
Right, because that's the other part of it that I think the producers have to learn is like, you're thinking about it like this complete project, when it's not. Like, you need to leave breathing room for the vocalist.
Yes.
Because they're going to bring something to it too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just, like a one-way street where it's like producer like makes a beat that's like crazy or whatever. And it's like there are very like few times where it's like, for example, like, I don't know, Lil Uzi Vert, he likes to like rap on those like crazy psychedelic, like spacey kind of beats that has a lot going on to them. There's sometimes that it sounds good and he doesn't really need a whole lot of room in the beat, like most artists would. But it's not that often that you'd find an artist that can like rap or sing on something that has a lot going on in the beat.
Oh, yeah. See, I would struggle with it. I feel like at that point, you need to take a more minimalist approach as the vocalist.
Yes.
Which is not easy for... that's hard for me, especially as a rapper. Like, oh, man, I want to give you as many words as I can.
Right.
I want to titillate your brain.
Like that, and, like the little like ad-libs that you might throw in the background or whatever. Like, if there's too much going on the beat, and, like, let's say you as the rapper want to throw an ad-lib in there, it might get lost in the rest of the sounds going on in the beat.
Yeah, lost in the sauce.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. Okay, and then so you build the beat, and at that point, this is something I always wonder. You're not mastering these beats, right? Like, you don't master a beat. You're usually posting it unmastered. It's mixed, but it's not mastered. Correct?
It's funny that you say that because most like I guess studio or what you call that, industry producers don't really master their beats. they'll throw like a soft clipper on like the master track or the master channel, and it'll make it just sound really loud and distorted and stuff. And it's like, for the longest, I thought that's what I wanted to go for. But then I'm like, okay, I just like them sounding clean. I'm very meticulous when it comes to my mixes and my beats, right? So I don't like the like 808 being a lot louder than like, my drums. Like I want the kick to punch. I want it to come through the mix. I want
feel
the
like
808 to be
sometimes they
heard
try
still.
to trick you into buying the stems because they just didn't level everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it literally, yeah, it just isn't like leveled out. It's like, okay, yeah, like you might have your melody kind of sitting there, and then the 808's at like -6 dB, and you're like, dude, the whole beat's clipping. It's like, sure, it might sound good if you're trying to like bump it, in your car or something like that, but
As a purist myself, I just shake my head when I see those waveforms. I
yeah,
go, no.
they're just literally like, okay, so like the top and the bottom of like the the waveform, and instead of it being like that, it's like literally maxed out, and you're looking at it and you're like, now how is it? There's no headroom here.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to
headroom.
mix this?
Headroom is the key word that we need in that equation. It's just headroom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like save a little bit of space for the guy behind you.
Not only that, but the rapper's gonna go and fucking compress the shit out of that. So
Oh, for
you
sure.
already have it so compressed, and then they're just gonna smash it down even more.
And then there's no dynamics,
Yeah.
So it's like, whatever, like, your melody that's going on, like it doesn't have any like flow to it. It's literally just stagnant. It's just, and it just doesn't sound as energetic as like the producer originally might have wanted, to intend
Yeah.
when making the beat.
Dynamics is a big thing with mixing, mastering, beat making, all of that. Like, I mean, if we were talking just before the podcast about like why it helps to mix your own music, and I think one big thing is learning the keys to dynamics, because so many different producers have different ideas of how a master is supposed to sound, and nowadays it's all about the lufs and the loudness wars and all this, and it's like the idea seems to generally be as loud as possible is better, and it's really not the case, because then you lose so much of those dynamics. If you smash everything too much, it doesn't sound as, wow, you just use a good word to describe it, but I guess pure would be a good word even.
Yep.
Like there's something nice about a song that feels like it's moving.
Exactly.
And there's no movement in that. When it
Right.
becomes a block, when it becomes too compressed, you can't find it. And the best, I think music from like 20 or 30 years ago did it so much better than what we see now, because it's like I'm saying, everything's about loudness now. If it's not loud enough to be heard through my phone speakers across the room, then it's not good enough. And
Right. A lot of producers are like, okay, if you don't hear the 808 thumping like on your phone speaker, then you're not doing it right. And it's like, well, of course you're not really going to hear it that well coming through your phone speaker. Like that's such a small speaker. Like whereas, you have a sub like that, like that's made for hearing bass,
Yeah.
So it's like, unless you're hearing, a song in your car, or you got some sort of like stereo speakers, or you're even, just chilling with like some headphones on, like you're not really going to hear everything that's meant to be heard unless you're in that kind of environment listening to it. Like you can't just be listening to it like on, your laptop speakers and expect to be like, oh yeah, like that's a crazy, kind of like sound just ambient in the background. Like you won't always catch everything. Like all those elements aren't going to really be heard unless you're like listening with like good, sounding headphones, or, with like a set of speakers,
Yeah, and I mean that almost adds value to a song when you've heard it on your phone a couple times, then you throw it on some speakers and you're like, oh my god,
Yeah.
there's layers I don't even know about.
It like helps you appreciate the track even more.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I ever since I started getting into like, making beats and music production, I go back and listen to songs that I always loved listening to, like just, growing up and like, in high school and stuff like that. And I would hear things I never heard before. I'd be like, when did they put that in there? I'm like, did they
Like the song
sneak-
got an update.
Right, yeah, did they sneak that, But I mean that is kind of like, that does kind of happen sometimes, like very rarely, but it happens sometimes where like, the artist might like update the track on Spotify. Like for example, this always cracks me up every time I think about it, but on Travis Scott's album Astroworld, I think it was stargazing. No, not stargazing. Yosemite. It has a feature with Nav on it, and for some reason the engineer like forgot to like turn his vocals up, so he was like way below in the mix and the beat was up here and he was down here, so it sounded like he was whispering on the track, and he really wasn't, but everybody started making memes and jokes about it. It's like, oh, when like you're trying to rap but your parents are asleep in their room next to you or whatever, and I'm like, how they roast the Nav like that, but
That's hilarious. To the point where so it wasn't intentional.
no, not at all.
Okay.
I think the original like upload is still on YouTube. Like if you look up, Travis Scott, Yosemite, it'll be there and you'll hear it. Like still, they didn't take that down. That video is still up. I think it's because that one was like distributed by like Spotify and stuff like that. Because as an artist, when you upload songs via like DistroKid or whatever, it creates a YouTube page for you automatically, and so it posts those songs on there. And then if you want to, you can also post them yourself on your own personal channel.
Yeah, but I feel like somebody like him would definitely be able to take that down if they wanted.
Yeah, I'm sure he could, but it's so funny because like it's still there. Like
Yeah.
I haven't checked like recently, but like within the past year, I've looked at it and I'm like,
That's funny because I assumed when you said that there was just his fans that had ripped the audio and it just exists because it was already out into the atmosphere. They already snatched it up and
Yeah.
re-uploaded it. But no, it's his account.
yeah, it's like the actual official like Travis Scott YouTube page, and I'm like, I can't believe like they didn't listen to the whole thing back. Like, and that's
You would
something I do.
think.
That's something I do
I
as like a
listen to my mixes
producer.
like 100 times
Yeah.
before I finally drop it. And I'm so meticulous. I'm
yeah.
like, I'll take notes. I'll be like, okay, second verse could definitely hit a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm trying to figure out how to make it as good as possible. And Travis Scott, he's somebody who, like, I've heard stories about him doing, at least with his music videos, he is so ridiculously specific. I think it was the Goosebumps video.
Oh yes,
in particular.
Just watching that last night at my buddy's house.
Great
just
video.
going through. It is like super trippy. The same like video producer ended up making a music video with The Weeknd for Party Monster, and so they had that same like kind of trippy effect going on throughout the whole video.
Yeah, what's genius about that type of video to me is, I mean, for one, it works perfect in like the low attention span atmosphere we have now.
Oh,
where,
yeah.
like the whole video is just 100 different visuals.
It keeps you like interested. You're like, okay, what's gonna happen next? Because
And
it's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's all different.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It's all different. That like it's not like they did 10 different things and it's cycling between them. It's like the whole video is just
Right.
stimulating your brain with all these different ideas. To the point where I wonder where Travis Scott's even coming up with this shit.
Right. Yeah. It's like, okay, do you just like go up to some guy, like a videographer or whatever, and be like, hey, this is what I want done exactly this way? Or like, do you think like, the producer would be like, oh, like maybe we should try it this way, but with like a twist, So it's like, it makes you wonder how they brainstorm these ideas, for the videos.
Yeah. And Travis Scott is somebody who I have to imagine is very involved in that type of thing because he has that consistency in his visuals and whatnot. And all of this being said, I'm very surprised that went out that way with that song, considering how meticulous he is.
Right.
Like, you would think that he would have been on top of that, but maybe, maybe it was just lost in the mix somewhere along. Maybe it was like 3 masters away from the final master and they just uploaded the wrong one. It could have even been that.
It's very possible, yeah, because who knows how many different versions of the same song, is there? Like how many different files it takes to have like the final master. You know?
Trust me, it takes a lot.
Because like me just being a producer, like I'll work on my beat for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's with mixing. Before it used to take me like so long just to even complete a whole beat, right? But now it's like, it's all structure. It's literally like you add in and then take out elements in like certain verses, and then the other verse kind of flip-flop it, So I like to start out my beats with like the intro and then come in with the hook and then like the verse, and then after that a hook and then a second verse and then the final hook. I've been keeping my beats kind of like a little bit shorter lately because the attention span,
It's real.
Yeah, dude, it is. with like TikTok and stuff like that, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, it's like people want to see stuff now. It's like they don't want to have to like watch a whole like 4 or 5 minute video. You know, it's like they're like, okay, unless there's something that keeps them, you know, like their attention span, just like we were talking about with that Goosebumps video. Like you're kind of like looking at it and you're like, whoa, there's so much going on. I can't stop looking at it, you know. But if you're like a content creator, and I wouldn't consider myself a content creator, but I do like a little bit of like different things. Like for example, I uploaded. I'm also a drummer, and so that's actually how I started growing up. Like I was drummer, and then I got into making beats in about like 2019, and so it kind of just came natural in terms of like the bounce and like some of my beats and stuff like that. You know, I already had that percussive like influence in me just growing up being a drummer, and so it's like the structure of beats and stuff like that. It's just like I'm big on that. That can take me a while too to just structure a beat, because I might come back to it the next day and be like, you know what? No, I don't like that kick pattern. Let me change that up right quick. You know, so it's a lot that just goes on.
It's good that you could care that much too.
Yeah.
Because I tell you, I bet a lot of these guys are just slapping together a template and tossing it out into the world. They're not giving it a second thought. And you want to be passionate about what you're making. I think that's what makes the best stuff.
I agree. There was a video I watched this morning, and a guy was saying, he's a producer on YouTube, and he goes, make sure you're putting out your best work. He goes, obviously put out whatever, you know, you have, because like the more you make, the better you'll get at whatever you do. And that goes with everything, really. It's not just, you know, like making beats or whatever, but you want to make sure you're putting out your best stuff, because you never know who might hear it. And if they hear it and they like it, they might be like, hey, let me hit this guy up, you know?
Yeah.
And that's how I come across so many different artists and like musicians on the internet, like through like TikTok or Instagram or something like that, you know? Like I'll hear them singing and I'm like, I dig that. Like I want to work with them, you know? So I'll DM them or whatever, you know, and just kind of see what goes of it. But, you know, it's really cool just connecting with people via stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's two things I would say off of that. It's one, like never be afraid to reach out to people, because that butterfly effect is real too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, if you don't take those, you miss every shot you don't take.
Exactly.
I mean, and that is 100% a reality that you can't escape. You know, if you spend all your time thinking, oh, I shouldn't drop this beat, it's not my best material, then you might not get that one guy. But because, you know, sometimes what you think is not your best, somebody else might love too.
Oh yeah.
So it's a kind of a double-edged sword. Like you want to do your best, but you also want to constantly be testing yourself and pushing yourself in different directions. And maybe some of those directions aren't what you would consider your best.
But other people might think it is.
Might. And the other thing I was going to say is, even if you feel like you're going down this avenue that's not what you're used to, still put 100% of yourself into it, because that's where that magic really comes from too. That's why I say, like, a lot of people, it almost feels like they're just slapping it up and putting it out there, when really it's like, if you really invested your whole 100% of your brain into that beat, you could have made something so much better.
Oh, for sure,
You
yeah.
have, and for me, as an artist, when I'm perusing through beats, as soon as I get that feeling of like I feel like we're just going through the motions, I just go to the next one.
Exactly.
Because that's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
You know,
You'll
looking for
know
something.
when it hits you, you know, like your brain just kind of lights up and you're like, all right, I got to write to this right away, you know?
Yeah. And it's like a creative spark, and that can only come from the initial spark in the person who made the beat.
Exactly.
They have to start it. Yeah. I mean, it's an art. It really is an art to get better at honing that. I think it's almost just like, it's like anything, you know, that 10,000 hours thing. You need to get more proficient at expression. It's not easy to express that creative energy, and everybody does it differently. So no matter what advice anybody gives you, in the end, it's truly like, how good are you at expressing your vision?
Right. And like you said, everybody has like a different approach. They go about, they go about it differently. You know, it's just, it really is a process, but that process can be like taken from multiple different directions. So you never really know, like, I used to just binge watch so many videos on YouTube, like how people make these beats, or, you know, like how to make certain, like how to level your beats and stuff like that. And I used to think that I had to do that the exact same way every time I made my beats, right? And it's like, no, like, and then you find out like every track is going to have like a different way you mix it. It's not going to be the exact same way. You know, like it might use the same plugins or like the same effects and stuff, but it's not going to be the exact same like decimal point, like 5.0 or like, you know, 3.7. Like it's not going to be that same
cheat sheets.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. And it's like, yeah, they're like all over Instagram. You'll scroll through and you'll see people that will be like, oh yeah, here's a cheat sheet for like how loud you should have your kick, or how loud your you know, your snare should be, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, that's not the right approach. To me, it's like, what sounds best? You gotta, and when I first started making beats, I was just like, okay, how do I make it sound good? And I used to ask people online. I was in in the Reddit groups and like Discord and stuff like that. I would just join Discord servers, and I'd be like, well, how do I make it sound good? And they just say, use your ear. And I was like, the fuck do you mean use my ear? You know, I'm like, that's what I'm doing when I'm making the beats, you know? And, you know, fast
And you were
forward,
looking for a cheat sheet.
I was just kind of like, I want them to sound good. How do they sound, you know, like the industry pros, you know? And it's like, you find out like the industry pros, like they've been doing this for years. Like sometimes it's like, you know, 10 plus years they've been in the game. And so that's how it sounds so good. And fast forward to now, you know, like I've been making beats for about 4 years now. 2019, yeah, 2023, and they definitely sound so much better than they used to, you know, when I started out.
Well, it's funny too, because like tracking your own progression is an interesting thing, because every time you're making something at the time, you think it's like, oh, this is good, this is good stuff, and then you listen to the beats or the raps or whatever that you made 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and you're like, oh my god,
You're like, I thought that was good. Why didn't somebody tell me otherwise? But it's funny that you say that, because I was just thinking yesterday when I was like, you know, working on a beat or whatever, and there was this rapper slash singer that I hit up like back in 2020, like a year after I started making beats. I was like, oh yeah, I got a few that I feel like I could send this guy, and he listened to them, and I actually, like, honestly, I appreciate him giving me a chance by listening to him. And he even gave me like feedback. He was like, hey, I would take time to work on sound selection. You know, he's like, you know, make sure the melody kind of fits whatever drum sounds you're using and stuff like that. Like, just focus on sound selection.
Now,
and he wasn't rude.
How did you respond to that? Because I've always, it's kind of hard, because creativity is this thing where you want to feel like you're doing your own thing. So I always struggle when people give me advice. It's like, yeah, but you're just not, you just don't hear it the way I hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So how did you take that in a good way, or did you kind of think like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about?
To be honest, yeah. So, like at the time, I was just kind of like, oh wow, so maybe he doesn't like them. But at the same time, I didn't get upset, because the way he responded was very like genuine. He was just like, yeah, just work on, you know, sound selection. Like, you'll definitely get better. You know, he's like, I could see, you know, you doing something like good in the future. He's like, but like right now, just, you know, I would work on making your beats sound better. And I was just sitting here, I was just like,
such a backhanded compliment.
I know. I was just like, you know, I was like, okay, maybe he just doesn't like what I'm going for. But like, I definitely like, especially like just now, I appreciate it so much more, because it actually helped me get better, you know? And like to this day, I appreciate him for it. Like, I'll never forget him saying that, because he wasn't rude. He wasn't like, oh, yo, this shit's ass, you know? He wasn't ever like, these beats suck, like, you should quit. You know, like, he never told me to like give up or anything like that. Whereas, you know, other people might be like, dude, music's not for you, you know? And you can't let that shit get to your head.
No.
You got to be like, I think you're wrong, so I'm going to keep going. That's exactly how you have to take the approach, you know. Just if you're doing anything in life, somebody's going to tell you you shouldn't do that because it doesn't sound good or it doesn't like suit them. Just because they don't like it doesn't mean that like somebody else won't like it. Like you were saying with, you know, beats and stuff. There's this producer named Foreign Tech, and he's produced for like a lot of like Tory Lanez songs. And I love like the beats and the producers that he works with, Foreign Tech being one of them. And there's a song called Still Be Friends by G-Eazy featuring Tory Lanez and Tyga. And that beat just goes crazy to me. And I was watching a video on YouTube, and somebody had recorded his Instagram live. He was just on live, and he was showing how he made that beat. Like, he was breaking it down. He goes, to be honest, like, I think this beat's trash. He's like, I don't like it. And I'm sitting here like behind the screen watching the video like, are you serious? Like, this beat fucking slaps, dude. Like, how do you hate this, you know?
And that goes back to what we were saying about, like, sometimes what you think isn't good is something
Crazy
completely
good
different
to somebody else. Yeah, you know, like being, and I want to think of it as like being the, you know, one making, or like the creator. Like, you're a lot harder on yourself
100%.
than the person consuming it, you know? So it's like,
because you see every little thing that you pick at it, you know? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I could have said this. I could have said this.
Yeah.
That goes for all of life, too. Like, all those times that you're talking to somebody and, like, you say goodbye and you think you said goodbye wrong.
right.
Like,
and then
oh,
you overthink it, like on your way home or whatever. You'll be like, did that come out wrong? I'm like, wait, did they think that I, you know, didn't like what, you know, hanging out with them or whatever, you know? And yeah, it's like the overthinking part.
And in the end, that person has, they stop thinking about you saying goodbye right after you said it.
Exactly. Yeah. They're just like, oh, okay. Yeah. You know, like, I'll see you later or whatever, you know?
Yeah, like they don't care, and that goes for making music and making beats and making anything. It's like you're so self-conscious that it's almost it's to your own detriment 100%.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's like you can make a beat and then be like, okay, it's all right. Like, you know, it's not the best that I've done, which I do that, you know, like I'll make beats to this day. I'll be like, that beat I made a year ago sounds a whole lot better to me than the one that I just made. You know, it's like, oh, I still kind of like hold this one up on a pedestal because I put so much into it, and not just time, but like the creative process, like the things that just go on in my brain, you know, like just different elements or whatever, whether it's like panning effects going on throughout the beat or just kind of like that like reverb that just kind of like lushfully just goes through the whole track. You know, it's like the different things that can go on, you know, in the beat, like just the creative process altogether is crazy to me. I love it.
So you upload these videos on YouTube as type beats.
Yes.
So that makes me wonder, are you going into it with this in mind? Because it doesn't sound like it with the way you described your creative process. So do you just kind of
got it
think,
there.
what does this sound like?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So like I'll go in like with an open mind. I'll make the beat. And then just before I export it, I think, well, who would sound good on this beat? And there are times where like I don't hear an artist, like specific artist on that beat, right? I'll export it and be like, 2 or 3 different people could fit on this, you know, or like even, you know, somebody else that might be a little bit more versatile. But there are times though where it's like I can't imagine anybody on this beat, you know. But
And what do you do?
I just name it and then put the key and the BPM in the title, and I just leave it as that. And then if I upload it, you know, on YouTube or something like that, I'll just put like whatever genre it is, type beat, you know, like I don't know, like space, like trap type beat or something like that. And somebody will find it. Somebody will come across it and be like, yo, like this is kind of good, you know? Because I found that there's a lot of producers that end up just posting like beats, the type beats on YouTube, and they won't even have an artist in the name. It'll just be like guitar R&B type beat, and it'll have hundreds of thousands of views. And I'm like, damn, people really are looking up like, you know, guitar R&B beat, and theirs just happens to show up. And it
Lo-fi type
trends.
beat. I've
Yes.
typed that one in many times.
Yes, yep. And
Yeah.
you know how it is, because it's like, how many different rappers are specifically using only lo-fi type beats, you know? It's like, there's this guy named Eldre. I'm sure you've heard of him. He has made quite a bit of money just uploading like lo-fi beats on Spotify and like Apple Music and stuff like that. And he's gone viral on TikTok for people just using his sound, you know?
Wow, so he's not even trying to get people on the beats. He's
No.
just uploading them as ambient types of things.
Yeah, and people will be like doing homework or you know, just like trying to chill out and listen to that while they're like maybe even like drawing or something like that, you know?
Wow. See, that's interesting. I mean, like, I've seen a lot of these streams on YouTube, even where it's like lo-fi 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's usually what it is. I think it even says on one of them, like, to use while studying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it like the picture is usually of like some like animated like person just sitting there, you know, like drawing or whatever, or
We're
like
talking about the same stream.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yep. I can't remember the name of the channel, but it was live. Like, you know, it was 24/7. Literally was 24/7 for like a couple years straight, like without, you know, like interruption. And then I think YouTube cut them off because they're like, oh, hey, you're kind of sucking up all of our bandwidth. You know, so it's like they were like, okay, well, you got to end the stream. And then if you want, you can start it over. Well, it's like it was like one of the longest streams on YouTube that were going, you know, like for so long. And then the whole like it became a whole like big thing on Twitter. People were like why did you cut their stream off? Like it was going so well, you know, so smoothly, and it was 24/7 until they stopped it, you know. And at that point it's like, what if somebody was just listening to it and it just cuts out and you're like, oh, maybe my internet went out. You hit refresh. It's like, no, they're done streaming. And you're like, that doesn't seem right.
Streaming for 3 years.
Yeah, you're
What's
like,
going
that
on?
doesn't seem right. Did they die?
Did I just enter a different multiverse?
Right, yeah. You're like, okay, wait a minute. There's not somebody else that's doing the exact same thing. I mean, like, there might be, yeah, but it's like, it's just people love consistency. You know, it's, you know, like they'll be used to it. So it's like they might stick to one or two like channels or like, you know, artists, and that's about it, you know. So they'll like, you know, listen to that one specific YouTube channel that's streaming those lo-fi type beats 24/7.
Yeah.
Like, why would I need to go on to, you know, this other channel unless somebody were to bring it up to them, like, hey, like, check this guy out. And it's like, oh, okay, sure, yeah, like, you know, you'll click on it by like word of mouth or whatever. But for the most part, if you're looking like things up on your own, you'll stick to what you're used to.
How in the world could they keep that going for all those years? Were they adding different beats to the playlist along the way?
I
That's what
assume
wonder.
so, and probably just like repeating them. You know, obviously it's not going to be like just 5 or 6 beats on repeat. Like that would get boring. You know,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
as like just a normal listener, you would get bored of that. You'd be like, I mean, I get tired of listening to the same 10 songs on the radio. So
Exactly.
that's why
And when
Spotify.
you pull it up the next day, you're going to want to hear different lo-fi beats than the ones you heard yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah, because you'll be like, "Hey, I already heard these like 20 times. Like, I want to hear something else." So I assume it's just like probably just a bunch of different producers like just submitting beats, and they probably just be like, "Okay, just drag it into the queue." You know.
Wow.
I imagine that's how it is. I'm not
Amazing.
sure, but that's just kind of how I would kind of go about it if I were to do something like that.
I never knew all this lo-fi lore.
Yeah.
Didn't know any of this.
I'm kind of I'm curious now. I have to look it up. Like
Go
the,
for it.
I think it's Lo-Fi Girl or something like that. But let me so
We can shout them out if we look it up, so that way the
YouTube
people can go and check it out.
it literally is Lo-Fi Girl. Yeah, YouTube Lo-Fi Girl. That's the picture right there.
Yeah, that's the one. We
Her
were
just
talking
like
about
just
it.
drawing or whatever with the headphones on. Yeah.
Pretty
and-
much, if you just type in lo-fi hip-hop type beat, lo-fi beat, anything like that, it's usually what comes up on YouTube. I've seen it a million times.
So
Drilled into my brain at this
oh yeah,
point.
like it's almost like just knowledge that it's you don't even need it to be in your head, but it's just kind of occupying it at that point. You're just kind of like
and it is great background music, too.
oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like it doesn't like take much thought process. There's no lyrics usually, you know. There's no lyrics, so you don't have to like kind of your brain won't like focus on what they're saying. It's just kind of like super chill, laid back stuff. And it's like you could be doing anything. You could be doing housework and be listening to it or whatever. And it doesn't take much like process and on your end as the listener, the consumer. It's just it's just there, so it's not just dead silence. But so this says the stream had nearly 800 million combined views and had been streaming continuously for about 21,000 hours.
My God.
Yeah.
Shout out Xfinity or whoever their internet provider was.
Right, I know, dude. Like, how high do you think their bill was?
I mean, they must have had that unlimited plan.
Had to, dude. Like, oh my God. I can't imagine just, I mean, I know it's just like a still image and like, just beats playing and stuff like that, but like, that's still got to use a lot of bandwidth.
We're getting in the weeds now because I
I
really
know.
am wondering. Like, the people listening go, what the fuck are they I don't know what this means.
You're right. What is bandwidth?
Bandwidth. That's how you know we're nerds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we dive deep into this stuff. Not just music either.
No, I'm a straight dork. I
Yep.
am. I like learning things. What can I say? What can I
Exactly.
say?
I'm the same way.
I got to ask you about, so the drums then. How, you've been drumming your whole life then.
Yes. Yep.
And so how did that translate into hip hop exactly and making hip hop beats? Now, did it just start with like, I guess, how does that even happen? Like, how did that transition occur?
So, my first job, I want to say I was like 16, 17 when I started, but I had a coworker who would always play music on the speaker back there in the kitchen. And
We all know one of them.
Oh, yeah. And one day I came in and a song came on and I was like, yo, who is this? And he goes, this guy named The Weeknd. And I was like, this is really good. And it wasn't just him singing either. It was the beat that caught my attention. And like it just had those like kind of like articulate like drum patterns. It wasn't like that average two step that's like, it wasn't that straight through. It was like a boom, ska, boom, boom, boom. It had that bounce to it. And you're like, okay, your head kind of bobbing and stuff like that. You're like hearing the beat. And so I kind of like went home later that night, kind of did, I went down the rabbit hole of like The Weeknd or whatever. And I listened to a lot of his songs and I was just like, these beats are dark. I like it.
Yeah.
So that's what got me into like wanting to make beats because I liked how they sounded.
And it's interesting because it's like, it probably, I imagine it like showed you something that beats can be, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Because it's like, there's people that'll like still do like drum covers. Sometimes I do too. Drum covers of like just hip hop beats, like there'll be popular songs out there and like drummers will somehow like translate like the trap or the hip hop drums into a drum set,
I used to love when Travis Barker would upload those videos where it was like him doing a drum cover of Crank That by Soulja Boy. That is so dope to me. And I wish there was more of that now because that is such a cool idea even. And drums and bass, this is what I was taught. Those are the groove. That's
Yes.
what creates
the rhythm.
the rhythm.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it keeps
Everything
it
else
going.
is melody.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like obviously you need a little bit of like everything in there. It's the different elements that like make the song what it is.
But it's like those are the bones.
Yes.
That's the bass.
Like if you don't have drums, like there are some songs that still sound really good, whether it's just acoustic guitar or like, piano and stuff like that. But like if you want energy, you need drums and bass,
Yeah, and they do so much.
Yeah, they do.
That's what makes the people move.
Yep.
If
Gets
you
the
ask
people
me.
going.
It gets it's controversial.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
What are some significant songs you think that really utilize the drums well in hip hop?
That's a really good question. So I've been listening to, and shout out Chase Atlantic. I've been listening to them the past like 2 or 3 years, probably longer than that actually. But they have a song called "Oh Mommy," and I did like a drum cover of it, and it's really cool because I added my own like twist to it, and I posted it on Instagram. And a couple of the band members happened to see it and they commented on it and like reposted it. I was not expecting it. And I woke up the next morning to like just, a whole bunch of people being like, yo, like that drumming is amazing. Like awesome job, And I'm like, whoa, I was not expecting this. I just wanted to tag them in it, because like it's their song. I always give credit where it's due. I don't care if anybody sees it. If, even the person I like, made the video like with doesn't see it. Like, I don't care, I just like to give credit where it's due. And so there was like a couple different like pockets that I played in on that song, like specifically in that video. And it's usually just me playing off like the kick and the hi-hat. So it's like a few hi-hat rolls in there and then like a snappy snare. And it's nothing like crazy fast, but it's just the way it translates in my brain, from like the original like beat, whether it's like the programmed drums or whatever. And it's just like me being a drummer growing up. I'm just like, I have an idea. And then I just lay it down just like that. And for the most part, it's just freestyle. Like it just, I hear it in my head as I'm playing it. It's not like, oh, this is how I'm gonna record it, so I'm gonna do this. I will play it a few times, like before, to get a really good take. Obviously, even as artists, like you record yourself doing different takes, rapping like a verse or even the hook. Like you said, it's like there's times where you're like, okay, I feel like I can like, come at this like with more emphasis, on a certain word or whatever. So it really just kind of like goes with how the creative, mind is, so like,
And nobody's gonna do what you're gonna do.
exactly. They can, like see you do that and be like, yeah, I can replicate that. But that's the thing. It's like remaking something is a lot easier than just creating something out of nothing.
Oh, 100%. And I feel like the best covers are the ones that are their own interpretation.
Yes.
Yeah.
They'll still have the original, like groove and stuff like that, but the person covering it might add in a little bit of something that kind of throws the listener off, but in a good way. They'll be like, "Whoa, like I like that,"
Yeah.
And so it makes it unique.
And it's how you heard it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what's so interesting about it. I mean, I've done quite a few videos now where I've just like done random videos of me singing different songs, and I think one reason it works is because I'm always doing my own thing. I'm not, I think a lot of people just don't understand that. They don't get like that's the beauty of covers.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
take
yep.
it and you do it how you heard it, because how you heard it isn't what it was.
No, and then it's almost like that game like telephone,
Yeah.
Somebody starts out by saying something and you say it to somebody else and they might hear it differently, so they say it to somebody else. And all of a sudden like it comes back around and it's just completely different. You're like, "Wait, what? That's not what I even said remotely." But like the way you hear it and then you lay it down, and when you cover it, like you said, it'll sound different to somebody else, and then they might not even know the original song, and so they'll kind of like make a cover of your cover, and then it sounds different to somebody else that's never even like heard anything other than like that last video that was covered.
Yeah.
There's been times where I would hear songs and I didn't even know they were covers because they were so good, and obviously I hadn't heard the original song, so I'd be like, "Oh, I thought so and so made this," and then I'll have like my parents be like, "No, this is a cover," and I'm like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah," and then they'll like tell me the song and I'll look it up and be like, "Alrighty then."
I think Marilyn Manson's "Sweet Dreams." That's
Yes.
a great cover.
It is, because it's so dark and cynical, and then you hear the original one, it's just like the synths and stuff like that, whereas with Marilyn, his version, it's just super dark and like it has that like thrash sound to it, especially with the drums and his vocals being like crunchy and stuff. I don't know how to like really explain it, but you know what I'm talking about.
If anything, I feel like it fits the vibe of what the lyrics are saying more.
Yeah, it really brings them
communicates
out.
the ideas better
It
than the
does.
original. I think another song that really does that so well is "Hurt" by Johnny Cash, if you've ever heard that. It blows my mind that he didn't write that song, because the original is by 9 Inch Nails, and you go back and you listen to the 9 Inch Nails version and it just doesn't hit the same way. It's
That's
like the Johnny
crazy.
Cash one, and the reason he wrote it is because he identified with the lyric, or the reason he covered it is because he identified with the lyrics. But just the way they fit with who Johnny Cash was at that time, it's amazing he didn't write that song.
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable. And I think those are the best covers. Those are the timeless ones.
Yeah, because like I feel like being, like an artist, if you're, creating this like piece of music, it might end up being a complete masterpiece to somebody who hears it, and that inspires them to want to cover it. They're like, "This is so good. I relate to it on so many different levels, so I'm gonna make a cover of it." Like, why else would you cover a song if you didn't like it that much?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it also just displays the beauty of individuality and how our voices are just so different from one another's. I mean, what
Yeah.
you're going to say and do is just so different. I think one thing that's so interesting about the producers and musicians that stick out so much from others is that they just make more unique choices. Simple as that. Their choices are just more rooted within themselves. And that's why I said that earlier about learning to express yourself, and how that's like the key to all of it is once you figure out your own voice and how to pull that out of you, you're able to do things that nobody else would ever do.
I agree. And so back when I like started out making beats, like there'd be points where I'm like, well, what if people don't like this? And then you have to get into that mentality of like, I don't care if other people don't like it. I like this. I'm making this because I like it. If other people end up liking it, awesome. If not, like, it's not like, unless you're making a beat for a specific artist, like if they hit you up and be like, hey, can I get some, beats? That's a different story. But if you're making something, like just out of boredom and like you just kind of wanted to just dive into it and you make something and you put it out, you can't be worrying about if other people like it or not. You have to, if you like it yourself, that's all that matters.
Yeah. And so this is something I struggle with like, if I wanted to work with a specific producer, and I think there's this Gabe Sinclair. He's a fantastic artist, fantastic producer. I recommend his stuff to everybody. I've fanboyed about this guy on the podcast so many times. It's ridiculous. But Gabe Sinclair is beyond talented. Love the guy. And I hit him up once, was like, hey, how can I get a beat from you? And he said, like, give me a concept, and then we'll go from there. But see, this is the thing. I'm always looking for the magic.
Yep.
I like to be the guy who's just scrolling on a Beats website or on YouTube, and I just find the one, and then I just start writing. That's
Yep.
me. And so if you want me to give you a concept,
You're like, I can't even think of how I'm going to put that into words. Like, my brain knows what I want, but I don't know how to put it into words. Like, it's literally just a feeling,
exactly, and I'm looking for magic. So if I just tell you, like, old school, this and that, and then what I get back isn't the magic I was looking for, I don't want to tell you wasted your time.
Yeah,
You know? That's why I always, it's the first thing I do with you. I ask, what's your beat catalog? Where can I find your beats?
Yes.
Because then I'll find the one.
Yep. You can just go through whatever, and if one speaks to you, you're like, okay, yeah, this is it. Like, I can just start writing to it. I've had, for example, I uploaded a video on Instagram like a few days ago, maybe even like last week, but these like West Coast kind of like Tyga type beats. I don't know why, but I love making those types of beats. They're very simple, but they have bounce, and that's what I love in certain beats. It's just that bounce, And so
it's fun to make them.
It is, yes. I'm sitting there, I'm like bobbing my head and stuff while I'm making it. I'm like, wow, like I made this, like
You're like, this is it. This is the one.
This is it. I'm like, I don't even have to do anything else to it. I'm like, just export it, upload it to Dropbox or whatever, like this is it. I'm not gonna go back and change anything. Like, I like it exactly how it is. So I uploaded it to Instagram, and I ended up tagging Caitlin Raps in it. She ended up getting famous because she duetted Russ. Yes. And she went viral. Yes, Handsomer. Yep, the remix. And she popped off. And so then I just started kind of listening to some of her songs, and she likes using those types of beats that I like to make. And I'm like, what if I get her on one of my beats, So I uploaded a beat onto Instagram and tagged her in it, and I was like, can anybody just, you don't even need to like the video, just comment and tag her in this. I just want her to see this, like, I'm not asking for much, like, I'm not that guy that's like, hey, like, you have to listen to my stuff on repeat. No, I don't care about that. Just simple @ and then her name, and then you never have to visit my page again. I don't even care, you know what I'm saying? But
no, did you tag her like in the comments and the post itself?
The post and the comments, and then I would post it on my story and tag her in it and be like, hey, like, what do you think about this?
She got 3 separate notifications.
For sure. Like, I'm like, hey, like, I know that she'll understand that you got to be consistent, because I imagine she was the same way. Everybody's got that hunger in them. They're just like, hey, like, I got to make it. I don't care how I make it. I have to.
Well, and the ones who do are always the ones who did have that hunger.
Yes.
Like, there's a million of us that fall to the wayside.
Yep.
But the ones who are the successful ones were just as hungry as the other ones were.
Exactly.
Well, if not more.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like people around you might have the mentality like, oh, I think I'm going to quit because, like, I'm not where I want to be. And it's like, okay, you've only been doing it for a couple of years. Yeah, that might seem like a while, but there's people that have been at it for 10 plus years, and they just made it big. They just got their recognition, And it's like, for example, like Tiesto, I think it was he's an EDM producer, and he didn't like really make it until he was in his like late 30s, early 40s. And it's like, the dude's living the life now, but it's like he was putting in that time while he was young, and he was doing what he could, and then once it finally, like, the recognition hit in and set, he was just like, wow, just kind of like, the dude is like almost, he's like, 40 is kind of old to, like, be like, I don't know, like famous. Like usually people nowadays, like I feel like especially artists, you know, rappers and stuff like that, like they'll blow up in their like teens, you know, like late teens, early 20s. And it's like a lot of people, I mean, and I used to think this way too. I would look at them and be like, oh man, why aren't I big yet? But at the same time, it's like, I'm not doing everything that I can to make it big yet. Like, and that's what has to click in your brain. You got to be like, it's all or nothing. You got to give it your all, or like you're not going to get anything at all.
And comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes.
Like you're comparing your trajectory to somebody else, and that is not you.
Exactly.
It's just simply not.
And you don't know how many hours that they put in, like in their craft doing this. You don't know the behind the scenes. Like, a lot of people will hate, especially like on the internet. It's so easy. People just, you know, comment hate stuff like, oh yeah, you knew so many different people. It's like, but how do you know that they didn't reach out to them in the DMs and being like, hey, like it could be like a year straight that they were trying to send, like, for example, like producers, like there's producers that'll make so many different loops and they'll like send them out to other big producers. And there was a YouTube video I was watching, and this guy, like for like literally like a year straight, you know, I think he was sending like loop packs to the producer. And the guy ended up finally like seeing it. The one producer ended up seeing it and hit him up and was just like, hey, like send these to my email. Like, you know how like rewarding that would be? And like, I'm the type of person that hates to be the guy that's always annoying somebody. But it's like, hey, like I really want to work with you. It's like, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this happen. And so going back to that Caitlyn post, she ended up liking the video. So I was like, okay, does she like the beat too? You know, it's like, if so, like hit my DMs. Like, what's the email? Like I can send you beats to, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I know you saw it. Like, you liked the video. Like it only had like 10 likes on it, but like she was one of them. And I'm like, that's the only one I really cared for. You know, that's the one that really matters to me. And so
I know that feeling. So you get that notification, you're like,
yeah, because it just pops up and it's just like, you know, like Caitlyn Raps, liked your reel. And I'm like, okay, which one? Because like I've tagged her in like 2 or something like that. And it's funny because a fan of hers ended up following me. Like she found the video and followed me on Instagram. And then while I was at work earlier, I get a notification from Instagram saying this person used your sound in their reel. And I was like, I'm curious what it was. And she goes, I'm sorry, but this beat that like BK made, you know, for Caitlyn or whatever, like just too good. I had to hop on it. And so she kind of like recorded herself with her phone, like kind of like rapping over it or whatever. And like just that right there, like made me so happy. Like that made my day, because like it doesn't even matter if it's good or not. Like she liked it enough to like want to like, you know, write on it or like record over it. And it's like, that's the ultimate goal that I want.
To me, that's the beauty of art encapsulated in one little story right there. That's what's so beautiful about it, is those butterfly effects we don't expect.
Right.
And it
'cause
just what you make
waterfall.
means something to somebody that you could have never guessed.
Right. And if you never put it out there, if you don't put your stuff out there, you have nobody to blame but yourself. You know, like, oh, why didn't I make it yet? You know, it's like, I'm, you know, like 20, 30 years old and like I still haven't made it, you know, and it's like, because like, are you putting your stuff out there? Well, no, I don't think it's that good. So why are you complaining? This song by Belly, he's a rapper, signed under The Weeknd. He said, you can't complain about the pain when it's self-inflicted. So it's like, you brought this onto yourself. Like you weren't doing everything you could to, you know, be heard. You need to be heard. Like put yourself out there. If you don't put yourself out there, how are you expecting anybody to find you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I always like to liken it to the whole, if a tree doesn't fall in the woods, or if a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it, did it fall at all?
Right.
If you put your song up on SoundCloud and you don't properly promote it, did you even put a song up?
Right.
So it's like, even just beyond putting it out there, you have to hustle just to get people to hear it. Like people expect these end results to just pop in from out of nowhere.
Exactly.
They don't think about marketing. I was just having a good conversation with somebody earlier where it's like, I feel like a lot of artists, people in general, but a lot of artists especially, I see this where it's like they're so focused on the creative aspect of everything and that exploration part that they forget there's a whole other side to it. It's marketing. It's getting people to actually hear the material.
That's like the business aspect of it.
And it
you
matters
have to do it.
so much.
Yep.
So much beyond the music even. Like if you you could make 1,000,000 songs and it's as if you didn't because nobody heard them.
Yep. So like you can be like one of the best undiscovered like singers or artists that are out there, and you could have like or like be the best rapper with like crazy flows and stuff like that. But if you're not putting yourself out there and you're not like promoting, like you said, if you're not trying to push your work out there and people don't hear it, it's almost like you just don't exist.
The pain is self-inflicted.
Yes, exactly. And so like there'll be like artists that just arise out of nowhere and you hear them playing on the radio, all of a sudden you're like, where did they come from? And it's like nobody really knows except for like them and their team. It's like obviously like I found out that it's like it really is who you know and not what you know. So it's like me being a producer, it's like I could tell you all the things I know, but that's not going to help you get seen or heard. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you can only give people so much sauce. Like, you can only give people so much knowledge. They have to apply it themselves.
Right.
And most people don't. Like, that's why I feel like the whole thing about giving away, like, some people are so paranoid about telling people how to do things. And it's like, dude, nobody's even going to actually take that advice except the 0.1% of people who are so dedicated they will. So just tell people everything. Tell them exactly how to do it, because it doesn't matter. Some people are so paranoid. They're like, oh, no, dude, I can't tell you what the successful way to promote. Like, you'll see somebody doing it well, and then they just don't want to give you any advice.
They're gatekeeping.
They gatekeep.
They're like, no, because I'm afraid that you might like either get onto my level or surpass me.
Yeah, and in the end, like, the person who's going to get on your level, they were going to do it either way.
Right. They're going to find it out. If they want it bad enough, then they're going to find out, whether you tell them or they find it out through somebody else or just trial and error. That's a huge thing that I've also noticed. I'm really big on like trial and error. I will try like many different ways, and if I find, a certain way works, I'll keep doing that. But if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. I'm always persistent, and like not even just in music, but like I've always been a persistent person. Like if there's something that I really want, I will not stop until I get it.
And improvement comes through the trial and error. Like,
absolutely.
Through learning like what the mistake is. And that's why I like to think of everything as a growing process, a learning process. It's like either it was successful and you did well and you learn, okay, that's good, or it was bad and it didn't go well and you learn, okay, don't do that. Like,
right. The mistakes and you learn to not make them again. So you're like, okay, well, if you're trying to pursue something, like a certain goal, you'll be like, okay, well, I already know that I tried it this way, so I got to think, how else am I going to do it, And like, you could just literally keep on, you got to keep running, but like, it depends on whatever direction you're going in, like where are you headed? Like, and you have to learn to enjoy the journey, the process of like getting to where you want to be. A lot of people think, they want that instant gratitude of like, hey, I just uploaded this beat, or, I just uploaded my track. Why aren't people liking it and commenting or sharing it? And it's like, you can't think of it like that. Like there's been times I'd see, like posts, like TikToks or whatever. And it's like, I wouldn't see them until like a month or two after they've been posted. Like, it's like, why is it just now showing up on my For You page, So, and then the people that, posted that originally, I'm imagining they're like, where are all these likes and comments coming from? It's like, I posted this like over 2 months ago.
I already
like,
forgot about that.
Right. Yeah. You're like, okay, why is this blowing up? And a lot of people just want that instant gratification. It's like, hey, like, look at me, like I just posted this. And it's like, okay, but like hundreds of thousands of other people are doing the same exact thing you're doing. Like, you got to do it a different way.
We all got that main character syndrome. I really think so. I think each and every one of us is afflicted, whether we like it or not. It's so hard to realize that you really are just a voice in a sea of voices. And like, how do you stick out from that crowd? It's not easy. And it's also like, how do you turn what you're doing into something that's understandable to people through a format that isn't just what you're doing? Like, if you're doing music, how do I use social media to show people that music? Because that's beyond the original art form you started at.
Oh,
And I
for
think
sure.
that's a really hard thing to master for people. Even beat making, that's something that people, it's taken different shapes and forms throughout the years. I think the whole type beat thing is fairly recent, really.
Yeah, and you know, like there's debates that go on like Twitter and like stuff like that where people go, "Oh, type beat, you know, videos or like type beats are dead. Like people don't do that anymore." It's like, no, if you look on YouTube and you just even type in like, you know, like anything like an instrumental or whatever, you don't even have to type in the keywords type beat. You just type in like instrumental and you'll see the titles that'll pop up, you know, Drake type beat or, you know, like Gunna type beat. Like people are doing that because, I mean, I've even heard, I can't even remember which artist it was. I want to say it was J. Cole. Yeah, it was J. Cole.
I know where you're
you
going.
know, yeah. So he ended up looking on YouTube one day and he was like kind of just, he had that writer's block. And so he typed in J. Cole type beat. And one that, you know, popped up, he was just like, "Oh my God, like, dude, I gotta contact this guy. Like, this beat is really good." And he wanted to, you know, reach out and like let the guy know, like, "Hey, I like this beat." Like, imagine being that guy,
Right?
That, you know, that producer that made that beat, having the artist that you made the video type beat for hit you up and be like, "Oh my God, he actually looked up his own name type beat and hit me up for this beat," you know? Dude went huge.
If to me, that's like the whole thing coming full circle.
It is, yeah.
I thought that was like a genius chess move from J. Cole.
I agree.
Because if anything, it's validating those videos by him doing that.
Right.
It's him showing love to that culture.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, as the producer, like you can make a beat and then think, "Oh yeah, this artist would fit perfectly on it." But then you might have somebody else, like a friend or something, be like, "Well, actually, I can hear this person on it." So it's like you said, that validation of like J. Cole himself hitting up that producer, being like, "Yeah, this is definitely a J. Cole type beat." Like you
And the song is
inspired.
fire, dude.
He's like, "You inspired me to write this." You know, like this song goes out to you. Like, thank you. You know, and oh my God, like I just can't imagine if like somebody were to just say no to somebody like J. Cole, even though they post it as like a J. Cole type beat. Like imagine being like, "Yo, like can I get this beat from you?" And be like, "No." Right. Like how humbling would that be to the artist, you know? But like the fact that J. Cole himself like found that J. Cole type beat and hit up that producer, just it's crazy. I can't believe it, you know? And I never expect like that, you know, like if I post like a Tory Lanez or Chris Brown type beat, I don't ever expect them to hit me up being like, "Yo, this is wild. Can I hop on this? Can I buy this from you?" You know, but if it does, like that would be insane, you know?
Well, and if anything, I feel like it's interesting because now that I've heard you describe how it works, I bet that's how most people are doing it. I bet most people are making the beat first and then thinking who would sound good on this, and then it becomes X, Y, Z type beat. But like in that sense, I don't think you'd ever really expect the person to hit you up. If anything, it's an acknowledgement to the people, to the vibe that somebody is looking for. Like if I'm looking for, I think I've typed in Mac Miller type beat a million times.
Yeah, yeah.
And like if I have somebody over and we're freestyling, generally that's what we do. We type in something type beat, depending on what vibe we're looking for. So it's just a way to describe the beat in a way that doesn't like really describe the beat. It's just kind of a filling in that blank so that way someone will discover it, right?
Right, yeah. It's like literally like using hashtags on your beat. You know, like it's just you're using the artist's name and then people like you and other artists like will look up type beat, you know, certain artists or whatever, like J. Cole or Drake type beat. And if they end up finding something they like, they will write to it or freestyle on it because, you know, like I feel like it's a lot easier to do that than to just go on to like a random beat store and click through hundreds of beats until you find the one. Versus, you know, like if you type in like a specific artist type beat, it won't take as long.
Exactly. And we know what artists we're inspired by and what artists' music we like. So in order to find that, I mean, that's a really easy way to give it an SEO score, you know?
Yep.
You're making it obtainable to those artists.
Yeah.
And also, I can't even tell you how many producers I found through that type of thing, where it's like I typed in Mac Miller type beat, I heard one of their beats, and I went, oh, so they get it. And then I go and listen to the rest of their beats on their channel.
Beats, and you're like, okay, they definitely like captured that sound that, you know, he was going for.
Or just I can recognize the craftsmanship in what they're doing, and I realize like, oh, this is a talented producer. I would like to hear what else they can make.
Right. Yeah. And like and being a producer, one thing that I like really kind of like want to be is versatile. I like finding that in artists as well. If an artist can rap and sing at the same time, like that just makes me like them even more, you know?
Yeah.
And so like I'll end up, you know, just like making an R&B type beat one day and then like a hard trap beat the next day. And it's like there's no in between, but there's no specific like idea in mind where I'm just like, oh yeah, like today I'm going to be making a trap beat. Like it's just what I'm feeling.
Yeah. And that's kind of that whole thing I was describing earlier with capturing the magic. Like the magic is not something that you can just create a process for. Like you can't. It's almost like you're capturing something. Like it was there and you found it and you put it in a box and you tied it with you put a ribbon on top of the box. Like it's not something that just magically happens.
Yeah, it doesn't just come out of thin air. It's like you're putting yourself into the song, you know, or like the beat, and you're just kind of like, this is a part of me. I made this, you know? So whenever somebody tells me they really liked like my beats, like a certain beat or whatever, that makes me feel better than if somebody compliments me on like my style or like, you know, how I look or, you know, whatever. Like it just, music is just an extension of me. So like if I do like a drum cover or, you know, if I make a beat and post it and people go like, yo, like this is really hard. Like I like this. That like makes me happy, you know, because it's like, I'm able to make other people like enjoy, you know, life a little bit more, just like hearing, you know, stuff like, and that's all music is. It's just feeling, you know, like if it doesn't make you feel a certain way, then that certain artist or, you know, like genre isn't for you. And it's just because music is so subjective.
Yeah. And one of the best compliments I've ever received, it stuck out to me so much because I identified with it. Somebody commented on just one of the random things I posted on TikTok and said, people are going to compare you to so many different things, but you really are just yourself.
Yes.
That was basically what they said. And to me, it encapsulated it all in that one sentence. Because I think that the best creators are drawing from all these different inspirations to the point where you can compare them to all these different things. And yeah, it's cool if you say like, oh, this reminded me of Mac Miller, oh, this reminded me of Eminem, oh, this reminded me of Kendrick, this reminded me of Tyler, the Creator, whatever it is. Because, you know, oh, I like those guys. So obviously I must have drawn something from them for you to say that. But when somebody recognizes the uniqueness of it all, and they realize that it's you, it's not all these other things, it's you.
Yeah.
That's the most gratifying thing you could say.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, yes, like this is me.
Yeah.
I know it is.
You're like, thank you. You know, it's like you see that like I'm not trying to be a clone of somebody else. You're just being yourself. But then there are those certain people out there that try to sound exactly like other rappers. And it's just like, man, like you can tell, like it's so blatantly obvious, but like whereas with you, I know you're being unique. You're being you, like the you in unique. Like that's literally it right there.
Yeah. And it's almost like a lesson you can't even teach people. They kind of have to learn it themselves. If you're the guy who's emulating the other guy, I can't even fix that. I can't give you... I could say everything I just said, but it's like you have to figure out how to do it yourself.
Right.
I can't teach it to you. And it's just so hard for some people to do that. And goes back to this whole thing I've been talking about, where it's like just learn to be proficient in being yourself.
Yeah.
You are a professional at being yourself. Literally no one is good at it as you.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I can't say it any better than that. Some people just don't. They hear these words and they nod and they say yes, but then
it doesn't click in their head. Like they're just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. Yeah, like he's saying this, but
and then they make another Juice WRLD song.
Yeah, you know, and it's like it's one thing to like hop on a Juice WRLD type beat, but it's another thing to like try to steal his cadence and his like complete like crazy auto-tune sound. Like it's wild to me because these people will make preset packs specifically for certain artists, like Juice World Vocal Chain preset or whatever. And it's like, why would you want to try to be somebody else? Like, if anything, just use it to experiment with and then change it up. Don't keep it exactly how it is, because nobody needs, like, another Juice World. Like, even though, he's gone, like, people, you can't replace that,
And there's no craftsmanship in that.
No originality.
There's no originality in that. I mean, the template thing is that one just goes back to the beginning of this whole podcast where we're talking about, the cheat sheet thing.
Yeah, yep.
You can't there's no one size fits all. And you are not whoever the template's based on. Even the template only fit that one song. Like,
exactly.
You can't there's no template.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And you should be able to feel out each song and find each song. One thing I love to do is I'll write these raps, and then when I'm actually recording it, and this is one of the blessings of just having the freedom of recording yourself, is I'll throw the headphones on and I'll start rapping. I'll be like, I'm not using my voice the right way for this rap.
Yep.
And then I'll start like bending my voice in different ways till I find the pocket.
Yeah.
And once you find it, you're like, oh, so this is it. This is what this song needs. Just like if you were making a drum pattern, you're not going to use the same drum pattern on a trap beat as you are for like a reggae beat. Not
Right.
even close.
Like, it won't sound like it's all about like the groove, like reggae has that groove to it. And if you're using like the same old, like, two-step hi-hat pattern and like a snare on, every other beat, like it's just not, it's not gonna feel organic.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, it's like, and that's funny you say that, because apparently there was somewhat like kind of like popular producer who's gotten placements and stuff, and I think it's always weird to me that people like are like, yeah, like hit me up for collabs, like $100-$200 for a collab, and it's like, why? I'm like, I learned that, like later on. At first I was just like, yeah, if I pay somebody like $100 to collab with them, that'd be really cool, because then I could probably get a placement. You're not guaranteed a placement if you pay somebody for a collab, like.
Did you specify what a placement is?
Yes, so placement is like when you make a beat and then an artist ends up using that and it becomes a song.
Okay.
So, like if you make beats and you post them and stuff, if somebody like records themselves to it or whatever, that's one thing. But like if you get somebody that ends up like making a whole song out of it and posting it on like Spotify and Apple Music and stuff like that, like I would consider that a placement. It doesn't have to be anybody who's famous, like just as long as it's being used, and that's why like I'm super picky on like who I want to work with, because like I don't care to sell beats, right? I've only sold a couple beats in my life, and it's like now that I know that I'm a lot better than I used to be starting out, like I feel like I could like sell so many beats, but like I always have this like confliction with myself, like my inner self, where I'm just like, do I want to like try to grind hard and sell beats and quit my day job, or do I want to actually try and find artists I really want to work with and be like, hey, here's these beats, feel free to use them, you don't have to pay me, like. Because that's how I know that like my heart's in it for the music and not the money, because like I want to make stuff that will be history, it's like you want to be able to have stuff that like will last like a lifetime, and like when you're like, like 60, 70 years old down the road, you can look back and listen to it and be like, yeah, I made this, this is cool.
Yeah. I mean, one band that I love for that reason, I think Tool, they took, I wish I knew the number off the top of my head, but it's around 20 years that it took for them to drop their latest album from their last album. And I remember that long wait where it's like, as a Tool fan, you're wondering, when is this album coming? Is this even real? And they would always say and there was even YouTube videos of them live, like where they were performing songs that were unreleased.
Yep.
So it's like, you're so deep in the Tool lore, you're watching these videos like, oh my God, is this a song? Is this going to be on the album?
Right.
And when people would ask them in interviews, that was essentially their answers. Like, this is our legacy. This is what we're leaving in the world. We don't want to give an album just to give an album.
Yeah.
We want our album to live up to that status that we've established for ourselves. And I think that is one reason it's so important to put all of you into what you create is like you want it to be a representative of what you're capable of.
Exactly.
And you know, I just like, I feel like that's why it's painful to just throw a rap on a beat that you're not really feeling and then try your best to make that work. Like, no, wait till you find the one that you connect with and then make that magic happen. Don't just don't force it.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't force it. And it's funny that you say that because there's a lot of like people on Twitter, especially like the producer space, that are like, "Oh yeah, I make like 5 to 10 beats a day," and I'm just kind of like, are you trying to show off to somebody? Because as us other producers, we don't care. We're not using those beats, right? And
there's a reason you're able to make 5 or 10 a day.
Exactly, yeah, because you're not really putting much thought and effort into doing it. It's just like you said, it's like using templates. It's just like, oh yeah. And like, it's funny because there's people that'll be on like TikTok that are like speed running beats. And like, yeah, they might end up sounding good, you know? Like they could end up sounding good, but it's like...
And we're talking like a minute to make a beat.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of like... I'm sorry, but like if, you know, I'm making a beat, I got to make sure that I'm really feeling it. If I'm not really feeling it, then I might as well end up just scrapping it.
That speedrunning thing's at a whole nother level. They're not even listening to it until it's done.
Right. Yeah, they're just like, "Oh, okay." Like me, I'll listen to like, you know, a 4-bar loop like 20 times until I move on to the next part. And it's not just because, you know, I'm like, oh, this doesn't sound right or whatever. I'm just kind of like, I'm experimenting with different sounds. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you might end up laying like a chord progression down and you start out using one certain like a pad or something, and then you change it to like a Rhodes and you're like, oh, I like this even more. I think I'm gonna stick with this. Whereas, you know, the guys that are doing the speed runs are just kind of like, all right, just drag in a simple synth, just, you know, like click this in, you know, and whatever, like I got our pattern in, like boom, done. And it's just like,
God, that's hard for me to even imagine. Just, I mean, I get how they're doing it, but like, because we have this creative process, it is so hard for me to even... Oh, it's almost frustrating for me to think about.
Yeah.
I'm fuming over here.
Right. Because it's like you gotta put the feeling into it too. Like,
yeah, like what is music to these people?
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, you know, like I made a beat in like a minute or two, or like yeah, I made 10 beats a day, and it's like, okay, good for you, but like, are you really in it for the music, or are you in it just to make, you know, like so many beats a day and post it on your beat page just to sell it? You know, like, are you in it to just make a quick buck, or are you actually in it? Like, is this your passion? You know, it's like people can get good at something and then be like, oh yeah, I can make this, you know, like my money maker, you know? And it's like the money ends up changing their mindset of it, you know? So like, imagine one day like they stop selling beats, like their beats just don't sell because something new like happens to come out, a new trend comes out, you know? It's like I remember when like Lil Uzi Vert started, you know, like just started making music and it was coming out, and that sounded completely different than like what, you know, rap was going on like prior to. And I'm not saying like he's a pioneer for doing it, but it's just like, you know, and then you have people like Playboy Cardi and stuff like that. And I don't really listen to them a whole lot, but like I will admit it sounds a lot different than like a lot of other artists. And so they're kind of paving their own path, and like, you know,
they're being leaders, not followers.
Exactly. You know, like, you know, shout out to them. Like they're, yeah, like you said, leading, and they're doing what they want to do.
And it's a choice you have to make in yourself. It's like, am I going to be the guy that just does what the other people are doing? Or am I going to try to pave the way for everybody else?
Right.
And you can't, and you just don't want to be the follower, man.
Yeah.
You just don't. Who does?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's like, it's one thing to take inspiration, you know, from an artist that you really enjoy listening to. For example, like I've made a couple like beats and I didn't have them in mind, but after I kind of like, you know, after I finished it and listened to it, I'm like, oh, this sounds like something Chase Atlantic would hop on. And like I ended up posting one of the beats, and one of the members ended up liking it, and I was just like, I wonder if I could possibly get them on one of my beats, you know? It's like,
yeah,
it's these different dreams. Yeah, it's these different dreams like that, you know, happen while I'm just sitting there like, okay, like, do they like the beat, you know?
That's wild, because you almost like visualized it into reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the thing. It's like, If you take money out of the equation, like I'll be like, oh yeah, I want to be famous, I want to make so much money off of music. It's like you can't have that mindset going in. You have to have that like mindset of like, this is what I really want to do the rest of my life. Like there's nothing else that you could pay me to do, for me to be as happy as I am making music. And same thing goes with people doing art. There's this girl I know, and she loves making art. And it's like she doesn't do commissions anymore. And I was kind of wondering, I was like, well, why not? She's like, well, because it just doesn't feel like a hobby or a passion at that point. It just feels like a job.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, that kind of puts it into perspective, because it's like, imagine like you quit your day job or whatever, and that's the only thing you do. Like, yeah, you love making art and stuff, but it's like, if the only thing you're doing is getting paid to make stuff other people want done, and not you doing what you want to do, I can imagine how exhausting that could be.
I remember there was a funny story involving Machine Gun Kelly and Corey Taylor.
Oh, okay.
Where Machine Gun Kelly was going to have Corey Taylor on a song. And I don't want to go too deep into it because the details are hazy. But long story short, Corey Taylor ends up saying to Machine Gun Kelly, I don't think this one's for me. And then Machine Gun Kelly goes and causes a big stink about it.
A crybaby throwing a fit or something like, oh, he doesn't want to work with me or whatever,
He tries to make it sound like Corey Taylor ain't real. Like, you ain't real enough to work with me. Where it's like, no, bro, he just wasn't feeling the song.
And you can't force it because, like you said, if you end up trying to force it, the consumers, the listeners will be able to tell. They'll be like, this doesn't really sound right. Like
people
something's kind of
identify
off
with reality.
Yeah.
They identify with that real moment that you had during the creation. That's like what I was saying earlier about. That's why when I'm going through beats, I'll wait till I feel it. Because if I feel like we're going through the motions, that's not real to me.
Exactly. It's just temporary.
Yeah, and you're just trying to be something that you're not. I can feel it in the beat. It's the same thing like with so much of the stuff I see on social media nowadays where I feel like it's become easier to just make something that is easily digestible, and you'll get all of these views, and it's almost like these algorithms kind of promote that type of content, when in reality the best content's not that at all. It's somebody was feeling something and they made it. The best stuff doesn't follow a trend. It never does.
And it never picks up until like people start catching on and being like, wow, this is actually pretty good. And it's that like word of mouth thing, or in this case, like just sending it to your friends and stuff. It's like, yo, go check this person out. Like, this is really nice. Like, I like it. It's different. And sometimes all it takes is that one person to be the spark to start that next trend. You never really know.
Yeah. Yeah. And me with my main character syndrome over here, I'm like, it's going to be me. They're going to hear my music and they're going to know.
Yep. And like, yeah, as long as you don't give up, like one day, like everything that you're speaking will come to existence, You got to always tell myself that. Yeah, I always tell myself that. And I always like remind myself of that quote. And it's going to sound kind of like kind of cringe here, but like Drake says, he goes, see, the power of the mind is not a joke, And it's like, it really isn't. Like some people might hear him and be like, oh yeah, that's a hard line. It's like, no, it's like you have to actually digest it, Like, think about it. If you really want something done, like in your life, like you have goals or whatever, and you want to achieve them, you can't give up. If you give up just because like you're not popping or you're not getting, you're not, getting traction or whatever, in that moment, then you just might as well like, you can't have that instant gratification. You have to keep working at it. There's one video I remembered seeing, and the guy goes, you have to remind yourself that the gratification comes later. So when you put the effort and the time into making all of this, then, like once people recognize that, and like it's a snowball effect from what I hear, it's like people will end up hearing your work or whatever and discovering you, and they'll end up just loving it. And then that's when you go, oh my God, like I actually made it, And obviously I'm still on that path to like making it. I would say, like I want to connect with people. The first few years of me making beats, like and getting into music production, was me trying to find my sound. And now that I know like what my sound is and what I want to go for, now I just need to network with people. The network is, your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what that meant at first when I heard that, right? This is before I started making beats. I was like, well, what does that mean? Your network
Sounds like
is your net worth.
buzzwords.
Yeah, it's just like people just like saying mumbo jumbo, just saying words just to say it, And I'm like, I'm not that type of person. If I'm having a conversation, it's because I'm actually like interested in what's going on. I'm not one for small talk. So when I heard, network is your net worth, I had to really think about it. And it wasn't until, later on, like getting into making music, it's like you would watch the deconstructed videos of producers being like, this is how I made this melody. And then I sent it off to this other producer. He added the drums to it and then sent it off to this engineer. And then he, hit us back and said, hey, yo, like Quavo hopped on this. And then it's like, you never know what's going to happen.
And it's who you know.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's the cool thing. It's like the inevitability, You could make all these beats, and I've heard like producers that'll be like, yeah, I made this beat like 6 years ago and it's just now getting placed. It's like an artist just now hopped on it and we have a song coming out, but I made this beat 6 years ago.
And it's new to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody else other than like maybe, that producers like close friends and stuff like that has ever heard like that beat before. And so like to you and I, when the song comes out, you're just kind of like, wow. You're like, that's pretty good, And it's like some people might, I don't know, they might think about it a little too hard and be like, that kind of sounds dated. And it's like, no, it's like if the, overall production with the, rapper or the singer and the beat, like if it has good chemistry together, that's all that matters.
True art is timeless.
Exactly. And that's what I want to make, the timeless stuff.
Something that extends beyond the present moment.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like that network is your net worth thing. It extends out in so many different ways too. It's just beyond true. It's the fundamental. It is the thing that you need to understand if you want to make it in any industry at all.
Exactly.
It's who you know, like, and then that's why I've gotten so into what we're doing right now, podcasts and interviews. I mean, nothing propelled my growth more than when I started to reach out to people to do interviews.
Yeah.
And that made it so, this guy knows this guy knows this guy. And you realize there's just this spider web of people that we all are connected in these strange ways.
Yeah.
And I would hear crazy things. There was a series I did called 60 Seconds With, for those that aren't familiar with it. And it was like I would go up to somebody. What happens is I would reach out to people. I would say, hey, are you interested in being featured on this? I do it completely free of charge. And most people say yes. Mm-hmm. And that right there, that first step, that's what most people wouldn't do. Most people wouldn't even think to do that, just to reach out and ask. They would expect like, people are going to see an episode and they'll reach out to me. No, you are the one that needs to message the other people. And most of the time it's successful. And if it's not, whatever, just move on to the next one. Mm-hmm. And then once you've done like 20 or 30 of those, you start hearing things like, I saw this one you did, the 15th episode of 60 Seconds, and that's how I found out about this rapper.
Yeah.
And you realize the web you're creating. Like, so I'm having this butterfly effect with what I'm doing with this.
It's caused by the consistency.
And I'm meeting all of these people, and these people now know who I am, and they identify with me, and you know what I'm saying? Like, they know what I am in a way that they would never know if I was just the rapper that made the songs.
Right. And I love the approach that you're going with this. It's like, instead of you just being a rapper artist, you're, doing podcasts and stuff like that. And so, you're letting other people know who other people are and not just yourself.
It's crazy because it's such an obvious thing to do. Mm-hmm. Like, it's infinite collaboration. You could literally talk to anybody and that person's audience finds out about you. Your audience finds out about them, and there's an infinite amount of things that can come of that. Like, right. There could be a rapper who just stumbles upon this podcast here. They look up your beats, and then boom, it happens like that. And that's how everything happens.
I love it.
It's how everything happens. Your entire life is literally this. Think about anything that's ever happened in your life. That's usually what led up to it. It's just some random decision somebody made at one point. It's all random. And so if you don't take that first step, you never know what's going to happen. That's why it's like, it's like what you said earlier about the self-inflicted pain thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're inflicting it upon yourself by not trying to collaborate with these people and not reaching out and just seeing what is possible.
That's
like
the first
Caitlyn
step.
thing is you doing it.
Yeah.
That is you doing it. And it worked.
Yeah. Like she saw it and like I caught her attention, So it's like, it's just so cool that artists that you enjoy listening to know about your work and just know about like that you exist in general. I remember when The Weeknd followed me on Twitter like years ago, and I was like, oh my God, like I can't believe, like one of the biggest stars knows I exist, and it's like I didn't let it get to my head, but I just thought it was so cool because I was very consistent of like posting like some artwork that had to do with him in it. Like I used to make edits and stuff like that on my phone, like Photoshop and whatnot. And I just did it because it was fun. I didn't do it, for like money or anything like that. I just would do it, and then I would post it and I would tag him in it. And then the bunch of other fans of his would see it and they would be like, yo, this is so cool. So they would retweet it, and like they would have like thousands of followers or whatever. And then like somebody would retweet it that was like a fan page that would have like tens of 20, thousands of followers or whatever. And so it would be that big snowball effect like you're talking about, with the whole web. And it just keeps on getting bigger and bigger. And
it's so much beyond you at that point.
It is. Yeah. You can't think of like just yourself. You can't be like, oh, why can't anybody find out about me or whatever. It's like you put yourself out there. You never know if you don't take that first step. And like that's the same way if you go to approach an artist in the DMs. Like let's say I wanted to send a beat to somebody, and this actually happened. I've DM'd an artist before, and because I liked her vocals, like her voice, it sounded really nice. And I was like, I feel like I've got some beats that I feel like I could, hear you on. And she left me on scene, and I didn't let it hurt me because I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to take it personal. You never know, like, if they happen to just like open their, phone right quick or whatever. And it's the same way when people like, get hit up and they're just like, oh, hey, you want to go hang out today? And like they don't reply to you for a day or two. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I was busy. It's like some people get offended when if you text somebody and they don't respond within like the next 10 minutes, like they're like, they didn't text me back. Like, what's going on? It's like, you can't think like that way. That's so childish. You got to grow up and think beyond yourself.
Yeah, and I think maturity, a lot of that is just simply that, is broadening your perspective. And the more we go on through life and the more experiences we have, we're like, oh, wow, there's just so much that I used to not understand.
Yeah.
And that's everybody all the time. There's always something beyond you that you don't understand. And there's always these ideas beyond you that you don't understand, or how your actions affect people in ways you could never guess. It's all beyond you. And I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing. Some people would look at that negatively, and it's like, oh, damn, well, I'm never going to get it then.
Right. Like, oh, I'm never going to work with them. Or, like, if she doesn't like my beats, then, like, why are other artists going to like my beats? Like, you can't think of it that way. You just be like you said, like, okay, and then move on and find the next person to DM and be like, hey, I like your style. Do you want to work with me?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the different approach. I found that, like, I've seen videos where people are like, if you're a producer and you want to like try to network with other artists, whether they're big or not, like you can't just DM them and be like, hey, let's work. Or you can't just DM them a link of your beat store and be like, oh yeah, they're going to go buy some beats, or they want to work with me because I sent them a link. What are you bringing to the table? You have to like contribute some sort of value, So it's like, hey, like for example, like with the Caitlyn, like, I didn't reach out to her because she's popping. No, I reached out to her because I happen to find that she uses the same kinds of beats that I like to make. I'm like, if I make these types of beats, like what other artists would really like, want to use them? And then you find out that, somebody like her ends up using them, and they have that flow that's already established. They have that, like cadence and just like the raps that fit those beats specifically. So that's why I reached out to her.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I feel like, in I think 2 episodes ago, we had Mystery on here, and he was talking about meeting Token. And he mentioned how he didn't want to be that guy that was gonna like go up to Token and tell Token all this stuff about like, yo, I want to work with you, this and that. He's just gonna prove it through his work
Yeah.
to the point where Token would want to work with him. He's gonna establish the value.
Yes.
Whereas there are other people who would go up to that guy, hand him a tape, hang out around him as much as they possibly can, and you're missing the point. You're trying way too hard. You're burning them out on you. Like they don't need all of that. You're not offering anything.
Like there's so many different other people trying to do that same exact thing that you're doing. You got to have a different approach to it. You can't just be like, "Hey, go check out my beats," like, and send them, your beat page, or give them your tape and be like, "Hey, like let's work together. Let's hop on a track. Do you want to hop on one of my tracks or vice versa? Can I be featured?" You can't do that. You got to be like, "Hey, like, I feel like, we would fit like perfectly on a track," but then, like you said, your work has to speak for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to lay the foundation for that yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people just struggle with where to start. Like a lot of people hear all that and they're thinking, okay, so how am I ever going to get anybody to work with me on anything if I haven't started yet? But it's exactly what we're talking about. It's just throw those lines out until you get one bite. Just one bite at all.
Exactly.
Because that could be
just
it.
start. It doesn't even matter how you start. Like you're overthinking it to the point where you don't even want to start because you're afraid of failing and you haven't even started yet.
Yeah, you're thinking about thinking at that point.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, like what if I fail? It's like, okay, yeah, you will fail, but get up and keep going. That's what a lot of people do, and that's why they've made it, because they didn't give up the first time they failed. If they did, they wouldn't be where they are today.
Yeah. Man, there's I was recently listening to Swimming by Mac Miller. Great album. Mm-hmm. I love Mac Miller. Oh my gosh. Shout out Mac Miller.
R.I.P. Yeah.
R.I.P.
Great guy.
One of I think I identify with the way he created more than so many. It's so real. And it's somebody like me. It's like he's doing what I think I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I love it. But he has a song called Conversations on that album, and I can't say the line exactly because it doesn't come to me, but essentially the idea is, unless you're doing it, it's just a conversation.
Yep.
It's the actions. It's not the words that matter. It's what you actually do.
Yeah.
And I think that, so many people think they're doing things. They think they are because in their mind they did.
Yeah.
But what did you actually do? Like if I spend all day thinking about writing a song, I spend 15 minutes trying to write it and then I give up. Did I really write? No, I didn't write a song at all that day.
Yep.
But if I just sat down and I got into a creative space and then wrote a song, I did it. I wasn't thinking about doing it. I did it. You could spend hours thinking about doing something. You're wasting valuable time.
Right. Like instead of thinking about doing it, just do it. And like I used to be the same way when I was like, okay, like how should I get a melody down? Like should I like make it like a minor chord or a major chord or whatever, and it's like it doesn't matter. Just put something down, because if you don't end up really liking it, you can always change it later. And not only that, it's like if you end up making this a whole beat, like make a new one. And then you can go with that other idea that you might have had when you were making the first one. It's like, it's not like it's something that you can only do once. Like just do it. Just literally the Shia LaBeouf, like just do it, like doesn't matter how. Yeah, it doesn't matter how, just do it.
Shout out my homie Shia while we're doing shout outs.
Yes.
Man, that is a solid meme if I've ever seen one. And my man knew what he was doing when he did that too.
Oh, for sure. Like, dude, I'm surprised that Nike didn't like hire him for it, That's literally their motto. And this guy had like all the energy needed for that.
That is such a solid observation. How did Nike drop that ball? Pun intended.
Yeah, for sure.
That is wild. That's crazy. How did they drop that? Because, dude, all they had to do is throw him on one ad.
Yep.
That's it. They could have done that. Oh, man. Wow. How did I miss that one? I'm a rapper. See, you got rapper brain. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of like businesses on TikTok are following the meme trends. They're like, my boss told me, that if I did this, then it wouldn't get that many views or whatever. And it's like the video blows up because everybody, ends up liking and commenting on it because, it's the reverse psychology. It's like, oh yeah, I told my boss that our like business would get more exposure if I posted this dumb meme or whatever. And it's just like a picture of something and then like their like business in the background or whatever. Just kind of like give that like perspective, like, oh hey, this is what we represent, but here's this like dumb like meme or whatever right next to it, and it's like it somehow works because they're running with what's current and what's trending, and they just like it ends up working somehow.
Man, that would just be a wild job, though. I've thought about this. It's like if you were the guy that worked at a popular company, like let's say Starbucks, how in the world do you come up with TikToks to make?
Yeah.
Well, what? Their job probably literally consists of spending at least 2 hours a day scrolling.
Brainstorming and trying to like see what's actually trending, like what's popping off. Cause like you'll go through and you'll see all the different like CapCut templates and stuff. And you're like, okay, should I try and make one, or like, is that oversaturated? And it's like, just try it, give it a go. If it doesn't take off, whatever, doesn't matter. Like, just try and find another video and do something similar to that. It's like, it's just very interesting in how like that's kind of like what today's marketing is now.
It's so different than what it used to be. I mean, in a way, the purist in me kind of it pains me because like I'm thinking, oh, my content needs to be so intricate. Not at all.
Nope.
Not nowadays.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, I could make a video of me making a fart sound and that could get 10 million views.
And then so it's like, and then what you actually poured your like soul into trying to create, like a video for like a rap song, it just gets like maybe a couple like 100 views or so. And then like
if I'm lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, wow. The fact that this like very like dumb thing blew up, like I've seen people whose tweets like blow up, and that was the only one that blew up, and they're like, wow, out of all my tweets, this one blows up, like really?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why I feel like that job would be so difficult, because it's actually like the opposite of what you would expect it to be. You would expect it to be this thing where it's like they have to spend all this time making this content, but it's like, no, they just have to learn how to make the right trash.
Right, exactly, yeah. And it literally, like you said, you hit the nail on the head when you said it doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to take a lot of time to build something that's like, oh wow, like this is getting the point across. It's like, no, just like do something dumb that like a lot of other people are doing, and boom, like it just blows up. I don't know how.
I think it goes back to what we were saying about the identifying with reality thing.
Yep.
I think when people think of something as like, oh, this is low effort, this didn't take much, then they're more likely to identify with it and see it as something that like, oh, okay, I could have made this video.
Exactly, yeah. If they say that, if they think to themselves like, I could have made this, then they'll end up liking it more because it's like that much easier for for them to like it.
Meanwhile, I'm over here spending 6 hours on one TikTok.
Yep. Yeah.
Like thinking, this has to be perfect. I render it 4 times because it wasn't perfect the last 3 times.
Yep.
I mean,
and then all of a sudden it ends up being the reason it didn't take off is because you didn't post it at 3:05 p.m. on this certain day.
Oh my God, man.
It's the algorithm, dude.
We are all a slave to an algorithm. We all are. And the thing about that is, too, I was thinking about this earlier. I commented this on some video because some musician posted on TikTok how you could spend so much time working on a song only for it to get so many views, and how it kind of kills your aspirations. And I just feel like if that's what kills your aspirations, if your drive is killed by an algorithm, your drive wasn't that strong to begin with.
I agree 100%. Like you got to take the numbers out of it. It's just like money. Like, oh yeah, I'm like, I didn't make, a beat sale or whatever. So, I should just stop making beats. It's like that, like you said, like if you're posting your, your content, like your work, the stuff that you put effort and time into making, and you're not seeing like hundreds of thousands of views and likes or whatever, like you can't let that kill your drive, because like you said, you didn't have like that strong of a drive to begin with. Like you should know going into this, so I live life with like very little expectations, and like I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that as in like if I go in, to do something, I don't expect anything in return. I don't expect, like for my views to blow up. I don't expect, my covers to get seen by the members of the band that I covered. It just happens, and that makes that feeling so much better versus where if you're, expecting them to see it and they don't see it, you get your hopes up. You can't your hopes won't get let up, if you don't have expectations to begin with.
Yeah, I had this thought earlier. You should raise your standards,
Yes,
not
standards
your
high.
expectations.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, because your standards, having higher standards, gives you a higher standard of life. Your life gets better when you have higher standards, but you keep those expectations nice and low.
Yep.
Because you can't expect nothing, dog. You can't, not from people, not from the work you put out, not from anything. Because even just on the simplest form, you boil it down to like the easiest way to imagine it. If you keep those expectations low, everything's awesome.
And I honestly find myself much happier, like living life with like very little expectations because, like I said, it's like when you do post something and if it like does eventually blow up, you're like, oh my God, this is it, but it's like, you can't stop there. You got to keep going, keep doing it,
Yeah. And okay. So another guy that always gets mentioned on the podcast, gets a lot of love from the Ruse Radio, my boy, Mr. Beast. My boy, Mr.
Yeah.
Beast, he is the perfect example of doing the same thing a million times over and over, despite succeeding already. Like,
Yeah.
he has more followers than pretty much everybody, and he's still doing the same thing he's always done. Most people, they hit a certain point, they start playing it safe.
Yeah.
They go, oh, well, I better just keep doing what I've been doing. As in, like, if I got popular for making this type of song, I'm just going to stay in that pocket and keep doing that type of song. Whereas it's like, no, you got popular for when you made that song, you were exploring and finding something new. So keep exploring.
Yeah.
And then you'll stumble upon something else. Or what Mr. Beast does so well is he makes this content, makes all this money from it, and then keeps making content that's even better and putting all that money back into it. He
Yeah.
reinvests and he never stops focusing on the growth aspect of it.
Yeah.
Even though he's already on top, he's still thinking ahead. He's still thinking, how am I going to grow this more?
What's the next best way I can, get newer people on board?
And then a great example of how he did that is with the different languages.
Oh, yeah.
Genius. So he's already popular in America. Let's translate all my videos to Spanish and see how we do in South America.
Right.
And it did great. And he basically doubled his audience.
Yeah.
By just creating Mr. Beast Espanol.
Yeah, and it's so crazy to me because people like Bad Bunny, he's huge. I didn't know how big he was until I found out that where he originated from and like just a bunch of other different countries outside the US support and listen to him. It's like you can't forget that there's people that came from other countries, and so they're huge in those countries before they're huge in America. Like, just because you haven't heard them doesn't mean that they're not, somebody that's big.
I blew my mind when I found out that Drake Bell is super popular in Mexico.
I think he moved there.
Did he really?
I think so, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And you would never think of that. Like,
Right.
It's, in America, his music's not, like, don't get me wrong, Drake Bell, he's got his own little thing going on, but in America, he's not like a big name.
Like,
whereas he goes over to Mexico and you got a sea of people.
Yeah, that are like you said, like fangirling over him. And like, the typical American like you and I would only know him for like being in Drake and Josh.
Yeah.
Like, we're like, okay, his music, okay, whatever. I can't name a single song. The only song I know by him is the theme song of Drake and Josh.
Yeah. Well, he also did the theme to iCarly.
Really?
Yeah. And he does the backup vocals in that too.
Okay.
Yeah. Go back and listen to it. It'll make a lot more sense.
All
You're
right.
like, oh, this is kind of like the Drake and Josh song.
Yeah, yo. Okay. I like that. That is really cool.
Oh man. But I mean, like, in the end, it's just that you can't get caught up on any success at all because it's all this ongoing process. Like, everybody that you like that's a creator keeps creating.
Yep.
Like, Kendrick blows my mind in the ways that he tops himself. Every time Kendrick drops a project, I'm thinking, well, he's never going to be able to make anything like this again.
And he doesn't because he does something else, and then you're like, whoa, I didn't even know he was capable of doing this.
Yeah, and it's just that spark in him is so alive, and he's not allowing the success to get to his head. Like, oh, people liked when I made Good Kid, Mad City, so I'm going to make Good Kid, Mad City 2.
Right. That's the part 2. And it's like, that's how you end up falling off because and I see it happen. Like a lot of people hate on Nickelback because they're like, oh, they sound the exact same, but they like carved their own sound, so it's unique. And so they'll, come out with like an album or whatever, and it's like, okay, it sounds similar to one of their older albums, but it's not identical, So it's like, people will notice whether it sounds like almost an exact copy of your previous, work. But if you kind of change it up, even just a little bit, like it'll keep them hooked and listening to it.
Yeah. And hey, man, you can hate on Nickelback all you want, but Rockstar is a banger.
Oh, facts, dude. Like I remember growing up and just watching MTV Cribs, and that song was one of the songs that would always be playing on MTV. So like, that's a banger. And How You Remind Me, like it's just those old timeless hits. Like anybody from any culture would recognize that song and be like, this is How You Remind Me by Nickelback. This is Rockstar. Like it doesn't matter who you are. Like they'll just know it. And they'll be like, just singing along to it. Like they might act like they're, a hater, like on the bandwagon and be like, oh, they're trash. But like if that song comes on at the bar, like, they're over there just like, hey, I want to be a rock star. And then you look over and you're like, didn't you just say you hated them last week? Yeah, I don't really like them. Oh, but you're like singing along to them right here,
Yeah. Yeah. Be a leader, not a follower, all right?
Exactly.
Like
yeah.
Nickelback publicly. That's what I say.
Yes, that is me. And it's just because like, it also, for me being a drummer, like they have a song called Animals, and like that song is like fast paced, like just driven by like drums and guitar, and it's like, that's the stuff that I thrive on, is the energy that's put out in songs.
Yeah, I think another band that gets a lot of unnecessary hate, even though they're really creative and they have a lot of energy in their music, is Imagine Dragons.
Yes, and I don't understand why, because it's like, I don't know other artists that sound like them.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, they are being unique.
Yeah.
But people almost act as if they're generic. But they're not.
No, not at all. Because when they came out on the scene, with like Radioactive, you're like, wait a minute. You're like, this doesn't sound like what I've heard before. I don't know if I should like it or not.
And maybe that's where the break happens. Mm-hmm. Maybe people are just worried that because it's I mean, maybe not because it's so unique, but just like, I feel like they're taking what pop and rock were and they're combining it in this way that if you wanted to, you could interpret it as like, oh, okay, this sounds just like a lot of pop music, sounds just like a lot of rock music, when really they're just taking the good aspects of both and blending it into this
taking
unique
the best
thing
of the two and then mixing it. And that's exactly what like artists like Linkin Park and Papa Roach and Limp Bizkit did back in the day with like rap rock, early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s. It's like, you wouldn't expect something like that to be a thing. Like usually it was just like hip hop, like, like NWA or like Run DMC or whatever, like, stuff like that, where it's like old school hip hop. Well, these guys in these like rock bands ended up like, they were rapping on the track, but even like old school Papa Roach from their first album, well, not first album, but the 2000 album, Infest, they have a lot of different like songs on that album that have like literally like a record like scratch, the record scratch sound going on while they're rapping, but like you still hear the electric guitars in the back and all that, and it's like, it's crazy because they even toured with Eminem in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Like a rock band toured with like, a rapper. Like Eminem wasn't, like a rock artist, like he was like strictly rap, so it's like, if you even like try to like blend two different genres together, you might cause, the attention of a different person in one of those genres to hear your music. So you never know. Like, don't be afraid to be unique, just do it, put yourself out there, and if people end up liking it, like, obviously there are going to be other people that like it, like whether you find that out now or later.
Yeah. I think Tech Nine toured with I think it was Korn.
Oh, okay.
Wild mix, but it was after Tech Nine had made a bunch of kind of rock metal type of music.
Yeah.
So it's probably just what you described, where by him making that type of stuff, it was just a fit that worked. It made sense. Even though you wouldn't think so, if you just throw those two names in a bucket, it's like by allowing yourself to make music that other people wouldn't think you would make, you find something else entirely.
Yeah.
I think that art is this beautiful thing where we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to find things that weren't already there, and we're allowed to combine things in these almost fundamental ways. I heard it was Andrew Huberman on his podcast about creativity, and he was explaining creativity in this way that he broke it down to this basic explanation, and I've never heard it explained like this. When we find something to be creative, it's because we identify it as a fundamental thing in the human experience. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. When we hear a song and we connect with it, it's because it's something human inside of there. It's like that fundamentally makes sense. I can connect that to the world that I see. Whereas art that doesn't hit, that's the problem. It's just not connecting it to reality.
Yeah. Like at that point, it's just like kind of like noise. You know, if people don't connect to it, then it's just kind of unnecessary noise. But to me, honestly, creativity gives humans like meaning. You know, it gives us like a reason. Like if we aren't creating, then what are we actually doing? You know,
and
we're just living. We're not living. You know, we're not actually thriving. We're just being here, walking the earth. And who wants to just do that? Like if you have, you know, some sort of creative outlet, whether, you know, like that's like something physical or like mental or whatever, or like a blend of both, you know, like go for it. Like if you're, you know, a book writer, you know, like you write books or whatever, or, you know, you're a painter, it's like that's all they're just different forms of creativity, and you're putting little pieces of yourself into that. And that's like, you know, that's the whole meaning of life, in my opinion, is like just to create. Doesn't matter exactly what you're creating, just do something, you know, but like make sure it feels genuine. Make sure it's coming from you and not just something because you think it's something that other people want to hear or see or read, you know. Make sure it's coming from you. It has to come from within. Otherwise, it's just like, what are you doing it for?
Yeah. Beautifully said, my friend.
Thank you.
I like to think of creation. It has to be. It literally has to be the meaning of life, because you were created one day.
Exactly.
We were created. That's the source of everything, is creation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just makes sense. That's why I think God probably would be a mom. God would be a mother.
For sure, yeah.
Because he birthed everything. If that was a thing and that exists, it would have to be a girl, because that's the only thing that gives birth.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's funny that you say that, you know, because it's like, what was the Ariana Grande song where she says, like, God is a woman. Yeah, you know, and it's like, I mean, yeah, like, you know, it's just I have to give women props because, like, they can multitask like no other. Whereas, like, if I'm on, like, Xbox or whatever and I'm, like, scrolling through and reading a text, and if my friend is talking to me, I literally will have to, like, my brain will go, like, error 404, and I'll be like, wait, what did you just say? And he goes, did you not hear me? And I'll be like, no, I'm sorry, I was reading something, and then I couldn't understand what I was reading, and I couldn't understand what you were saying. Women can do all these different things at the same time, you know, and it's just like, okay, I see why, you know, like they deserve like what, you know, like the goodness of the world. Like, I don't know, it's just crazy to me.
Shout out my ladies.
Yes, women, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, y'all are pretty cool. You're probably more wholesome than I am. You probably are just on a basic level. Most women are probably more wholesome and more down to earth than Ruse. It's just true. I'll accept it. I love my ladies. And like I said, I mean, I truly think that, like, I just like to think of it that way, man, where it's birth, it's creation. That is the fundamental of everything. That's where it all starts. And that's why art and movies and all of these different things, they're all trying to get to this idea of, like, what is creation? How do we create? How do we come up with ideas? Where do we draw from? And there aren't answers to a lot of these things. That's the beauty of it. It's a gigantic mystery. Creation is a mystery.
I think that's what keeps us going too, is that desire to figure out what that is, or like what's behind it, you know. And it's like we don't know, so it's that curiosity that just leads us to keep on going and to continue just creating, you know. But I was hanging out with a buddy of mine and his girlfriend last night, and we were just like watching a bunch of YouTube videos of like music videos and stuff. And I was showing them some of the stuff I like to listen to, and they were showing me some of the stuff they like to listen to. And we all listen to a lot of the same stuff, but there's also been some stuff I've never heard that they've, wanted to show me, and vice versa. And so his girlfriend showed me this video for Pharrell, like 21 Savage, and I can't remember the other artist, but a song called Cash In, Cash Out. And so I'd never seen the video for it before, but I've heard the song.
Tyler the Creator's on
Tyler
that
the
too,
Creator,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember because like all I think of is like the video visuals of like it spinning and they're all on it or whatever. And it's like some sort of claymation or whatever. But we were like just kind of questioning. We were like, I wonder if this was like built like in 3D, like some sort of like 3D software on like a computer, or if it was somebody that like did like frame by frame like claymations, like how they used to do for like Mr. Meaty or whatever. I think it was that show on Nick. And she goes, either way, like I honestly think this video is like true art, like it's a masterpiece, and it's like the lighting was perfect and everything like that. And it's like, I don't know, it's just, it goes back to like what you were saying, where it's like, a lot of the things we consume are considered art, whether it's music, like video, movie, like paintings and stuff like that. That's why museums exist, for like paintings and stuff like that. And that's why they're valued so high, because it's not because, oh, it took so-and-so like this many hours or days to do it. No, it's just because that's what people perceive it as. Like they're like, I think that's like a $20,000 painting, so that's what I'm going to pay for,
Yeah. True art makes you look within.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, like, for me, the way I write and the way that I craft music, I try to always do that. That's 100%, that is my intent going into everything I ever do when I am making art, is how can I make something that will inspire creativity in somebody else?
Yeah.
And there was a song I wrote back in high school, and I always bring up this quote just because, to me, it explains it. A match to a spark to inspire. I want to see you start a fire.
That's deep.
And that's it. That's art. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, like, that's why the best films and the best filmmakers, they're almost touching on something that is impossible to explain. Mm-hmm. Like, they're just able to ride this wave of creativity and create their own voice within that medium, whereas the best musicians are able to create that same wave within a sound form. Like, you're able to do something that inspires something in other people, and it's almost this never-ending cycle. We can always inspire creativity in one another.
And I think that's another reason why I felt so like, happy when that one girl ended up using my beat, like that one sound in her Instagram reel, where she was just like, I'm sorry I couldn't help myself, but I wanted to hop on BK's beat, that he made for like Caitlin or whatever. And I didn't make it specifically for her. It just, I happened to upload it and I tagged her in it because I felt like she would be a perfect fit for it. Well, like I got that notification and I watched the video or whatever, and I was just like, that's so cool that something I made inspired something like her to want to like sing on it or rap on it, So it's like, I know that's the feeling that I want to get from putting my music out there, my beats and stuff. It's like, I could get paid, like $100 for something, and like that's temporary. But the feeling of somebody being inspired by something that you made, that's forever. Like you'll look back and you'll be like, this person like thought that beat was hard, so they wrote to it, or like this person thought like, my song was pretty cool, so like they had it on repeat, they added it to their playlist. It's the small things like that make you go like, wow, like this makes life very like appreciative, like I enjoy life more when like somebody likes something that you made, like, I can imagine like somebody added your songs to their playlist on Spotify and you found out and you're like, wow, like that's so cool. Like it just touches you, you're like, that's so cool. Like it keeps you wanna like keep going,
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds you why you started creating.
Yeah.
Because usually it's the same thing within us. It's that somebody else did something that inspired us and made us feel like, you know what, maybe I can make something like that. Maybe that's within me. Like when you heard that Weekend song.
Yeah.
You heard it and you were like, wow, that's something that I could maybe do. And it just lights this spark.
And that's why I've been making beats, to this day. It's just like you said, it's like, had I not heard that, like Weeknd song, I probably wouldn't be making beats. I don't know what I would be doing, but it probably wouldn't be that. It would be something music related. I remember for the longest, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to find people and, I'm going to be in a band and I'm going to make it big as a drummer. And it's like, to this day, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know something will if I keep it up,
Yeah.
So that's why I post both, drum videos, like little, drum covers of me, and then I'll post like beat videos, and I try to stay consistent with that. And for example, I posted a video on Instagram and TikTok. I duetted this girl who did a little 25-second guitar cover of a Papa Roach song, "Last Resort." Pretty classic song. Everybody knows "Last Resort," and even if you don't really know Papa Roach, everybody knows "Last Resort." But she duetted that, and I was just at home not doing anything, and my sister sent me her video, and I was like, BRB, about to go duet this. And so I literally set the camera up, started recording myself playing, did a couple different takes just to make sure I got the right one, and I posted it on TikTok, and then I posted it on Instagram too, and I tagged her in it. Well, before I tagged her in it, I didn't know how many followers she had, right? I was just like, okay, yeah, let me type in her name that it showed up on TikTok as to see if she has an Instagram. Because you can't assume just because, one person has one social media that they have all of them. But I was like, okay, well, let's just see. So I started typing in her name, and I happened to see it pop up, and I was like, yep, that looks like that's her. So I clicked on it, hit post, and went to bed. And then the next day, I happened to see that she had reposted my side-by-side video with her playing guitar and me playing drums onto her Instagram story. She had over 400,000 followers, and so I have over 100 likes on that video in a day. And I'm like, I was not expecting that. I just like I said, I'm one to give credit where it's due. She inspired me to make the video of me drumming next to the video of her playing guitar. It's just that the inspiration and the creativity that comes within it, and it's just a never ending thing. It just keeps going. So it's I remember seeing a tweet that The Weeknd made not too long ago. He says, you can't wait for inspiration. You have to go out and look for it. You can't wait for it to hit you. You got to look for it. That's your responsibility, nobody else's. I was like, wow.
Wow. All right. I think this is a golden spot for us to end the podcast.
Yes.
This is beautiful.
Thank you. Yes. Dude, it's just stuff that just, you think of. It's stuff that you don't even really have to take a lot of time, and it's just, I love how good of a podcast speaker, even just a person to talk to in general. You keep your mind open, and that lets the person you're speaking with have their mind be open too. So it's ask away, fire away. I love it. Congrats to that. Dude, you're pretty good at what you do.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely.
I'm barely trying over here. And I think it's part of the whole philosophy we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I think that it's just that I practice what I preach. Yes. I'm doing it. I mean, and if you want to see that creativity, you want to see people express themselves, you have to allow them to do it. I mean, you have to listen. You have to keep your ears and your mind open if you want to pull in creativity from other places. You never know what somebody's going to give you. You never know what they're going to say. I think so many people get lost in their own ideas and their own philosophies, and they think that they know, but it's you never know. You really don't. And there's a beauty in not knowing. There's a beauty in allowing people to express themselves. And, it's why people stick out from one another. It's why every snowflake is different than every other snowflake. And every human just has this beautiful way of looking at things. And if we don't allow them, we don't give them that moment to express, we don't give them the space to be themselves, then they can't properly do it. And that's why the best interviewers are the best interviewers, because they do give that space. They give just enough. It's like a push and pull, and you have to be genuinely interested and involved too. That's the other thing. I think people get lost in the rules. Like, oh, I can't interrupt. I have to let them do this. I have to let them say that. I have a list of questions that I'm going to ask, and that's how we're going to do this. Like, the free form way of doing it to me is just the best way, because that's where you find something that you could have never predicted.
It's so natural.
Yeah.
And it just feels right and organic. It's like, obviously I could tell, like, just sitting here, like, you're not like sitting there like reading off, a list of questions, and like, it's just stuff that you're genuinely curious about and want to know, and so you ask it, and then me just naturally like giving you my response, and maybe like but you bounce off of that, like, with my response, and so it just keeps on going. And
yeah, dude, I've tried to prepare questions for these things before. I ask about 4 of them.
Yeah.
Because I just start riffing.
Yep.
And then it never gets done. So, like, it's hard for me not to, because I genuinely want to hear what people have to say. People are so interesting, man.
Yeah,
if
I
you
agree.
allow them to be, even the local crackhead on the corner, you give him 30 minutes, he'll tell you something wild.
Dude, for real. Like, you wouldn't think that people like them would have like crazy stories other than just being like out on the corner or whatever, but it's like, man, they probably lived a more wild life than you. You never know.
You never know. You never know. And that's the moral, folks. That's what I'm going to leave you with. Remember that you never know, okay? Oh, and you know what I want you to do is I want you to let the people know where they can find your beats, if they want to contact you, where they would reach out to. Make sure to lay that on them.
So you can find a lot of my beats on my YouTube page. I also have a BeatStars page, my Instagram, Twitter. It's all the same handle. It's at BKTHAGR808, not THE, but THA. So BKTHAGR808. Just so for the people that don't know, I'm sure, Ruse here would end up putting it up on the screen or something, but yeah, if you want to go check out some of my beats, feel free to. If you end up, following me or like DMing me and saying like, hey, I saw you from this podcast, like, feel free, like, I'll follow you back. I'm not the type of dude that's just like, oh, I'm not going to follow you just because, like, you're somebody I don't know. Like, don't be a stranger, just get to know people. That's what we were talking about this whole time. Like, reach out to other people, network, you never know what can go about it.
You never know. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know the answer. You don't got the answer, Sway.
Oh, Breakfast Club kills me, dude.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you stuck through this whole thing, you're crazy, and I appreciate you for it. Thank you so much. You mean more to me than you know. Ruse Radio, clocking out.